How do you think turning 19 at a fire base within a war zone would influence or shape your future? That people you grew up with in the ranks would be lost over the years due to being a combat casualty or another suicide statistic. Would you succumb to the anger and frustration of life's daily struggles yourself? Or would you find the courage to face your traumas and find purpose in becoming a better version of you? Would you then share this drive with others and reconnect with the ones that you had served with in the past years to fill a gap in the leadership connection that had been left vacant? Join me as I sit down with Dale Knollinger as we talk about his past service in the military, some of the struggles he's faced along the way, refinding his purpose in life, and in keeping his connections active among the veterans he served with during some of the roughest years of the war within Afghanistan. This is Veteran Success Story. Welcome to another episode of Veteran Success Story. This episode, the scenery is going to be a little different. The episode was conducted a little different as well, and ultimately is where I want to head with the show. But to explain, Morrison House open up their doors and let us do a recording there. The views that are expressed within this particular show are not those of that hotel group, but they were gracious enough to be a host, and we did an on-location interview with Dale Knollinger. And you're going to see back here behind me, if you're watching on video, the Devil's Playground by Andrew Bragg. And the reason why that's there, and it shows up in the episode as well, is that Dale was one of the men of 2nd Platoon Charlie Company 2508 of the 82nd Airborne, fighting across the river from us within the Argandab River Valley. So my book as well as his kind of tie in on this one, and really this interview is unlike any of the other interviews that have happened so far, and in that way is that Dale faced a lot of the same things, or a lot of the things that a lot of the guys post-deployment face. Life kind of, those strings were pulled, the stresses from deployment hit him pretty hard, and his struggle and the journey that he's been through, he wanted to share it with others. And this is just a very vulnerable and open episode, and one that it needs to be heard. Quite honestly, Dale's been through a heck of a lot, and he continues to stand and put forward efforts for his guys out there, and really has been, the example of what somebody that moves forward from a unit like that, and a unit that was hit like that over there, and taking care of the guys and making sure guys are okay and keeping guys connected. So I know this episode follows up the Scott Mann episode that dealt with human connection, and really this one here, it's no different, which is why we push things along and package these two together, because they're really, that human connection and what we discussed in these were spot on. So I want to get into it. And I want to say thank you to the Morrison House, as well as Dale, for being so vulnerable during this and sharing everything that he has. I hope you guys enjoy. And this is yet another Veteran Success Story. So today on Veteran Success Story, I've got Dale Knollinger, another in-person interview. We're doing it down at the Morrison House in Alexandria, which they were kind enough to section off some room for us. But Dale, man, it's great to have you on the show, man.
It's a pleasure to be here, man. I can't wait for this, and I'll look forward to diving in.
So just for background, I know we got two books back here. I always have, for the most part, mine up in here, but Devil's Playground. We were on essentially the same deployment, just two different companies. You were with Charlie Company, well, 2 Charlie, and I was with 1st Platoon Bravo Company. So this whole thing is just coming to a head, but I think it's awesome that we're starting to do things together in that way, and crosstalk and whatnot. I know Bravo is a little bit of a different beast, and 2 Charlie again, you know, for anybody out there, I hope they read the book and stuff and see exactly what you guys face and what we faced across the river from you guys. But honestly, I think that
through Andrew and anybody that's watched, it's the first episode that's out there. And crazy enough, and we were talking about this before, is that you sort of inspired this podcast in a roundabout way. You know, I know that it was you who reached out originally who had said, look, I've got a guy that I was deployed with, and he's writing a book about this too. And I know that you've got yours coming to a head. And, you know, I got to put you guys in touch. And from there is kind of like where case maintenance stuff came about through that. But I think the difference with the Devil's Playground and what we've talked about there is that you guys, Two Charlie's been so tight through this whole thing. And that's just blown me away on that, to where Bravo Company, there was another book that came out, you know, the one with Kessling, Bravo Company, aptly named.
Yeah.
But there was a little bit of a rift that was forming there because guys were concerned that it was an outsider writing this account about everything that had happened to us overseas. And I know that had been something that you guys had faced at one point. And that you guys were tight enough to be like, look, we're not letting this to an outsider. We need to tell this story. And to where Bravo Company, some of the guys opened up to Mr. Kessling about that interview and whatnot. You know, you guys right off the bat, right off the get-go, were like, this is a Charlie Company story. It needs to be told by two Charlie guys. And you were really, what it seems like, everything that I've heard from Bragg, and I've heard him say it on other podcasts and stuff before, is you were the glue, is the exact words that he said. You were the glue that held the platoon together and still continues to do so. I mean, you even helped him out on the book tour and stuff, which that's really the main thing that I want to touch on today. You know, I want to go into you and your life like we do with the different episodes, but really uncovering and inspiring other people is what this kind of this podcast is about. But how to get others to be able to create those connections again within their platoon and create those connections with the guys that we really like. That's what matters. You know, it seems like that's what drives you in a way. I know that's what drives me, is I see other guys out there and I'm like, how can I help other people out there? And you are doing it, and you've been able to kind of be that glue, and you were almost that the logistics guy back home. Hey, Andrew, you got to talk to this guy. Track him down. He's over here.
Yeah.
And you're running that. But, you know, thanks for coming on. Thanks for, you know, I know this has been a long time coming.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here. I mean, it's nothing better to sit down with another Two Fury guy and
right,
and really talk about, you know, our experience over there and what happened. And, you know, holding Two Charlie together has been something that's been, you know, it's near and dear to my heart for multiple different reasons, but it's, you know, it matters. And I think when you dive down the course of, you know, all the different avenues that are out there, and, you know, whether it be the VA counseling or whatever type of help, some of the best reflections only come from within, if you will.
Yeah.
And I think us being able to do that has been a very healing for each guy. And, you know, I think when you look at the suicide aspect that we've kind of chatted about, you know, today and other times, like, the only way you can really affect it is within, right? Like your own community, getting back to the grassroots, right? Like, how do you have the best effect on your communities? You help out your own community, whether it be volunteering at school or helping out at, you know, at a network or something in your own hometown. Kind of the same thing I'm doing here. I'm just affecting my community and working with my guys. And that's the only place that I can truly affect and truly have, you know, touch on. So that's what I focus on. And thankfully it's been paying off so far.
I mean, geez, man, I'll say, you know, I mean, that the seeing you guys come together, how was that first feeling when you guys, well, you'd seen each other at that wedding and stuff too, right? Like, yeah, and then you had the event at the museum.
Yeah, we've had a few over the years. You know, this has started, heck, let's say back in 2013 or 14. A group of us guys that have been on the first two 508 deployment, and the second to 508 second deployment kind of stuck together. And we kept doing these things, and as we were unpacking, if you will, some of the stuff that we were like, man, how can we do this on a bigger level? And, you know, there was at that time a lot of hesitancy within the platoon. I'm sure you guys experienced as a Bravo company as well. For whatever reason, none of us really completely wanted to talk about everything that was going on. But as things kept going, and I think as everybody went down their own route, they kept hitting dead ends, whatever it was, and they weren't getting the help kind of that they needed.
Yeah.
You know, they weren't getting what they thought they were going to get from going to the VA, going to counseling, confiding in family or whatever. And it was actually the Bravo Company book that was kind of the catalyst that kind of really pivoted, because we probably had done 4 other small reunions. There was probably 4 or 5 of us. I think the biggest one we had was around 17, 18. We had about 9 of us come actually here to DC to go visit some of the guys at the grave site. But it still wasn't a lot of participation. But in each of those encounters, you know, and seeing each of the guys together, I got to really kind of look at people during that time. I was like, man, like, I haven't laughed this hard in a long time. You know, I haven't seen smile like this in a long time.
Yeah.
And it was kind of that point in those mindsets that kind of got me and Rosa and LaChance to kind of thinking, like, how can we change this? And when the Kessling book came out, you know, it wasn't like, oh, our story's bigger or better, but it was like, hey man, we need a story. Like, our story needs to be told as well.
Yeah.
You know, like we had 6 get killed, and like, you know, we have a motto in our platoon: is the only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing. And it took Bragg to doing something, you know, so that evil wouldn't prevail. And when he said, you know, when he stood up and said, hey, I'm going to do this, you know, I said, how can I help? And having that influence and being able to say, hey, like, let me reach out and let me be the one that broker the calls and, you know, kind of be the pivot point was special to me. But it was also getting my goal together, because of those small reunions together, the only thing I want is to see all of the men that stepped through to Charlie in a circle together, because there's been no powerful healing in my life than being around my brothers when it comes to that trauma and those things that affected us.
Yeah. No, I mean, and that's the people who've been through that stuff together. You know, I've experienced the same thing. Like, we're just talking about it around the corner there. Is that, like, we have that instant report. It's built in. If you've been through this stuff with these guys, there's a different part of you that just it's there. It opens up. You have that. There's no barrier,
Exactly.
you know, to talk about this sort of stuff, and it's just natural. Like, you know, hey, I'm going through this stuff right now, and really, it's where someone won't open up to a VA counselor or a therapist, you know, with their guys and stuff, though. It's not there. You know, that barrier to talk about that exists within their head. It's just not there.
Oh.
They open wide up about it. And it, you know, I mean, me and you, this is the first time actually meeting in person.
Yeah.
We've talked over the phone a few times and everything, but it's kind of weird because I feel like we just instantly got right into it. You know, it's
the trust factor. It's the trust factor. Like, you just hit on, like, there's not, you know, you go to anybody, if you will, and you think that they got an agenda.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe they do, maybe they don't. But you think that your information is going to be told to somebody, what you say is going to get your, you know, weapons removed from you, whatever it is that your preconceived notion about a doctor. You don't let all the barriers down. You let them know the surface level problems, you know. But when you sit with a guy like me or you, and it's like, I got this going on.
Yeah.
You know, this is what's really bothering me. This is what keeps me up at night. That's where I think you really start to tackle the problems and start to understand, like, I'm not alone in this. You know, I'm not sleeping well. You know, I'm drinking too much. You know, I'm indulging in this or that. And it's like, all right, man, like, you got a problem. And it's, you know, it takes your brother sometimes to be like, bro, you know, no judgment here, but you need to step it up and do this or that, or, you know, stop doing this or that. And
yeah,
you can't have those open conversations, nor can that doctor sometimes have that conversation with you of like, man, you need to just check yourself.
Yep.
You know, and I think that's the brotherhood that we have is to be able to check on yourselves, and, you know, and I think the change that comes from that and the the camaraderie that comes back with it, and also like the new relationship that kind of gets formed with it, allows you to really move forward.
Yeah. No, I know that there was, that for us anyway, for Bravo, that elation phase of that first reunion when we all got back together, to where it was a little different, to where the second time we got back together, it was almost like that celebration phase was over and people were delving more into, well, what do you have going on now?
Yeah.
It was really refreshing in the way of, those war stories and stuff we're still told around the campfire, but it was more about, where's your life going now? And I really, I think there's something here, and I've talked about it with multiple people at this point, to where we already have this pre-built-in support system that was built within the military, whether it was through trauma or these shared bad experiences or, shared hard experiences. But it's pre-existing, and it's something to where they try to fill that void either with therapy or other stuff, but it's already there. Your community support system is already there. You just got to reach back out to these guys. And it's a lot of us to where we lose touch either when, global war on terror, the amount of that op tempo was just crazy, and you get either moved to a different unit or people leave. I'm sure, I don't know. I know a lot of Bravo company after that deployment, a lot of them just hung it up. They said, that's it. I'm done. I've done everything that I wanted to see in the military. That deployment just put it in for me. I'm finished. And they kind of disappear, and that's, in my opinion, that's the wrong answer. I did the same thing. I was like, hey, let me get away from this. Let me readjust focus. What's next? But then having to go back and realize, you did this the wrong way. You should still be moving together, forward together, not in the way of to where, you guys are separated, but also, build each other up. And the other thing is too, is we all have experienced a lot. We started doing a peer groups type thing to where we would all get together and start talking on this particular Zoom chat during COVID.
Mm-hmm.
And more often than not, one guy would have an issue that he was facing. And someone else on the chat would be like, I've been there before. Like, let me tell you what worked for me. It might not work for you, but let me tell you what worked for me. And, at least that's a good stepping stone or something to look at and evaluate. And that was incredible. That's actually something that I want to turn back around. And my focus is so all over the place right now, but to find someone to be able to run those or moderate those or find myself the time to be able to do that, just because I saw so much value in that.
Yeah.
And that so many of the other guys, have you guys experienced some of the same type of thing to where someone's been able to be a mentor for someone else there?
100%. I think literally some of the same points that you just said. Our first reunion was when Carlos Santos' son got married, and we got back together. And the origin story, like you said, I picture ourselves as like the college football team that went to the national championship. Like, we got to do our job at the highest level, right, during that deployment.
Yeah.
So that is always going to be, like you said, the origin story in the conversation piece. That's what we're going to fall back on. And that's great. But through these last couple reunions that we've had together through Colorado or guys at Bragg, we're starting to now more have like, what's the kids doing? Like, oh, your kids are in soccer, right? Like, what how's your son doing?
Yeah.
And stuff like that. And you're starting to see that. But to the calls aspect, we're seeing, guys come on the call and it's like, hey man, I'm having problems with my wife at home. I'm having problems with my kids' learning development or something like that. And this other guy's like, hey, I've went down this road before. You need to go talk to your kid about an IEP or something like that, because life happens for all of us, right? And you don't know what segment you're going to get yourself into until you're in that segment.
Yeah.
And needless to say, there's normally someone else in your own community that's went down that road. Divorce, job, losing your job, whatever. It all hits us. Like, we're all humans, and it hits you at a time that you're not expecting it. Life never happens on the page that it's supposed to happen on. Right? Like, it just ever. So there is someone that, like you said, they don't have the same, no one's story is the same, but everybody is going through the same stuff.
Yep.
In some way, life. And it has all affected us in some way, because you think that, I think especially in our case, that we went through so much, and that like your mindset hasn't completely left there. No matter what you think, it hasn't completely left there. And you're like, well, this happened to me because of this. And it's, no, this happened to you because of life.
Yeah.
You know, it didn't happen to you because of this. It happened to you because life just happens. And it's, how do you pick yourself up? Well, I don't know sometimes.
Yeah.
You know, you don't know. I don't know. But my buddy went through this 30 minutes ago. He knows. So there is a lot of that. There's a lot of, you know, just, I guess, navigating life together, if you will, is a good way to put it. Like, you know, we're all in a place now where we're professionals of some sort. We got kids, a family of some sort, you know, and it's like, how do we all move through this?
Yeah.
You know, and understand things, and, you know, how much of it is me and versus how much of it is just life.
That's, you know, and that, yeah, this sounds cheesy and stuff, but that is literally, I started hashtagging stuff through the campaign and stuff through this and through Veteran Success Story is like stronger together.
Yeah.
Because it really is. We're stronger as the unit that we used to be, or stronger as a unit.
Yeah.
Everyone has a different perspective to offer. Everyone has something to offer. Even the lowest Joe on the totem pole, there's something there, some perspective there to where they see it at a different angle than you do, or they've experienced life in a different angle to where they can help someone else out through that.
Okay.
You know,
it was the first, you know, for me, it was the first call when Bragg, you know, put his hand up and said, "I'm going to write this book about us." And we hopped on a call, and one of the things I like to do on some of the calls is like just go around the room. If there's someone that hasn't been on a call in a while, or a group of people, go around the room and just who you are and what's been going on. So the very first call, we went around the room, just, you know, where you've been in life, what's happened, and there was a common theme. I mean, amongst, not everyone had experienced the same thing, but for the most part, everybody had been divorced. Everybody had been to the VA for something. Everybody had had substance abuse at some point in time. And quite a few of us have been running into the law at some point in time. So it was like, to what you just said, like,
yeah,
we've all went down the same path.
Yep.
And we're all hitting these dead ends, but now maybe we can close these gaps together and start figuring out a way to move through that path without it hitting so many roadblocks. Because it's like, all right, that guy hit that roadblock there. Maybe if I, you know, take a right where he took a left, I can get around that roadblock. And that was kind of, it was telling. And now, you know, now we're getting on calls, and it's like, hey man, like, this is going on. And then someone's like, hey, I had the same thing going on with my family a couple months ago.
Yeah.
You know,
I talked to you about this sideline.
Yeah, exactly. And now you're having more, when we're getting on calls or in our group thread, I'm seeing more guys like, hey man, I'll reach out, I'll call you about this later. And, you know, more guys are like, oh yeah, me and him talked about this.
Yep.
And that's what it's about.
It is.
That's what it's about. It's, you can't be too prideful. And I think, you know, the one thing about the military is we're built up to be robots in a way, you know, and we're meant to be these machines that, you know, bound forward and execute our mission. Well, sometimes that takes a lot of other stuff to execute the mission. And now the mission's life. And how do we make it through life?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, and you know what, like, that's actually from here, this is the perfect spot, because I do want to get back to the fact of the platoons and stuff, and that togetherness, you know, that glue, if you will, that meshes you guys together, meshed a lot of our guys together. But I want to back up from there. And I know it's all in the book if anyone wants to read about it and stuff, which, yeah, absolutely. Like, pick up The Devil's Playground, because you'll read about Dale in there. And I think Andrew did a fantastic job, you know, even removing himself from it, and putting himself in that third person. I really do. I look at both of them, and I have so much respect for Andrew and what he did there. And I'm just like, I know I built mine for speed. Like, I was like, I need to get this story out there quick. But I love what he did in that book with you guys. But if, you know, if anyone wants to hear about things that your exploits and stuff, you know, hit that up. But let's back up and talk about you, some of your childhood, and then build that picture for you or about you. And we'll go into the glue, if you will.
Okay. All right. So, you know, was born in West Virginia. I lived in Indianapolis, Indiana for about 8 years of my life. And then my parents split. At that time, I moved back to a little town in Ohio where my mom was from, called Martins Ferry, Ohio, right across from Wheeling, West Virginia, blue steel kind of area, blue collar people, coal mine, steel mill area, about 45 minutes southwest of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. It's right there in Appalachian country. That time, I was living with my mom, single mother. I would say I had a bad childhood, but I didn't live a comfortable life.
Yeah.
There was a lot of violence around, a lot of just kind of, just a rough upbringing, if you will. And that kind of, with that opportunity, I didn't have a lot of opportunities in terms of college, sports, or anything like that. I was a good athlete, but no one was coming to get me to play for the team.
Yeah.
So I was good enough to get through in high school, but like life wasn't really going to go anywhere further. So all my buddies and everything were going off to college and everything like that. I'm like, what am I going to do? And there was an Army recruiter kept coming into the high school.
As there will be.
And finally I sat down with him one day and we talked, and I decided, like, this would probably be the best thing for me, is to remove myself from the situation. The area itself, that it isn't a bad area where I grew up, but there wasn't any opportunities. So it was, how do I remove myself from this situation, and how do I go do my part? And ultimately I signed up to be an infantryman. I did have a recruiter that told me he didn't want me to be anything Hartsville MOS, but he was like, you should be anything airborne. There's a lot more opportunities that way. So I remember going to the recruiter's office, at MEPS, and he was like, what do you want to do? And I was like, I want to be airborne and I want to fight. He was like, airborne infantry.
Yeah.
So boom, I was 18 years old. I went to basic training. I graduated in December of 2006. Went to airborne school in the first group in 2007. Graduated that, I want to say late February. So I think it's about 6-7 week course.
Mm.
And I was in Afghanistan by March of 2007. So I met my platoon in a fire base out in the middle of Afghanistan, and I did a 15-monther with that platoon.
So for like soup to nuts, like joining up at basic to finding yourself in Afghanistan, how much time?
So I went in August and then to March. I mean, what is that?
That's less than a year.
Yeah, 6 months.
Culture shock.
Quite the culture shock.
Yeah.
I got off of the bird in the middle of we were at a fire base brewing at the time.
So you showed up to a rear D detachment and then ended up.
Yeah, showed up to the rear.
Out.
I showed up to the rear D.
Yeah.
They literally sent me through all the SRP, go down and get your gear, all that type of stuff. I deployed, I didn't even have a weapon. So I made it through Bagram, Ghazni. I think I got my weapon in Ghazni. And then I went to Warrior to meet the company. Yeah, I want to say they gave me a weapon in Ghazni, but I was in country for about 3 weeks, let's just say, with no weapon.
Wow. And this is straight out of basic training. So, I mean, that is just, I feel like, I was short tracked, and I think I had like 8 or 9 months before I was hitting Afghanistan. That's nuts.
Yeah, I mean, it was just, I didn't know any better looking back on now.
What's going through your head?
I don't think that I was able to recognize what was going on.
Yeah.
Like you kind of talked about the fast pace and the tempo. Like at that time, it was just like expected.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like there was much time to really think. I'm 18 by the way, too. So I'm like just shocked. Like you're just moving. It's like, all right, well, what's next? What's next?
Yo.
You're getting yelled at. It's like, all right, I'm just trying not to piss anybody off.
Well, it sounds like you're still in that basic training type atmosphere, like, or thinking that mindset, like, all right, just go do the next thing because you told me to, drill sergeant.
Exactly. Like, I'm just like, all right, well, what formation do I got to be at next?
Right.
Like, how do I not get in trouble?
Point me in the direction of the enemy.
Yeah. So, yeah, it was boom, 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 boom. And, I don't even think I realized what was going on until years after, to be honest with you, in terms of like my life of that aspect.
Dang.
Because, you get off the bird with platoon at a fire base.
Yeah.
And, then life just sets back in again.
Welcome to the stock. Having the picture of the welcome to Vietnam.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I actually had a funny, the first night off the bird, I get off the bird and I had I was getting my bags and the ratchet strap was still through my ruck. And when I went to take my ruck, it like yanked me back and somehow my weapon went on fire. So I get off the bird and I'm standing there like trying to be a parade arrest for my platoon sergeant, who and all the NCOs around, and they're just screaming 10,000 different things at you, but my weapon's on fire. And he just thought it was hilarious. So fast forward about 2 hours, I'm in a ghillie suit with a M14, and they put me out on a mission, and we had a artillery unit with us, and they were shooting loom rounds like as a loom mission for the night.
Yeah.
So they thought it'd be fun to mess with me. So they were like, let's put him in a ghillie suit. We'll take him out with a couple guys. We'll shoot some loom rounds to scare him, and kind of mess with him that way. So lo and behold, they shoot some the loom rounds off, and a village started acting weird. Next thing you know, we have our whole platoon maneuvering on this village. And thankfully, I didn't do that bad that night. And it actually kind of let me escape some of the abuse that I probably would have accepted if I wouldn't have been, handling myself decently that night. Because, definitely I had no idea what was going on. I'm
just out there.
Yeah, I'm just out there. I remember I was out there with a guy, with a Sergeant Blazer, and they had a Pac 14 type thing mounted on there. And he's like, what can you see? And I'm like, nothing, it's black. And he's like, because it's off. And I'm like, yeah, Roger, I don't know how to turn this thing on. I'm tracking, it's black.
What unit was that? I
was in 2 Charlie the entire time. So I was with,
I
was in 2 Charlie, 2nd of the 505th, my entire career in the 82nd Airborne.
Dang. Wow.
Yeah. So, yeah, we went there, and then we got pulled back from that, and ended up going and working with the Polish for basically about a year on the Pakistan border as a Pakistan border patrol mission.
So, I know some of the guys that were the NCOs for the Argandab deployment, had there was all sorts of tales of the 15-monther they had just come off of. When did you get there? So you ended up spending a year plus over there, or at the very beginning? Did you get there right as they?
I was basically, I left about 2 weeks after the battalion did.
Okay.
By the time I caught up with the platoon, it was probably about a month and a half later. I know for sure I was with my platoon at Firebase Bruin because I made it there before Easter Sunday because they made me jump around as the Easter Bunny. And then my birthday is April 9th, and I know I turned 19 at that Firebase because a guy he was basically trying to get to know me, and he was like, so when's your birthday? And I was like, today. And I got pink bellied.
I was just going to ask.
Yes.
They pink bellied.
They pink bellied me after I drank a Gatorade round, a 105 round full of Gatorade. They made me drink that, then they pink bellied me. So I turned 19, I know for sure, in Firebase Brigade. So I was there, let's just say the last week of March, first week of April, depending on when Easter Sunday fell that time. I was there before April 9th, 100%. And I probably had spent a week before I turned 19 to platoon.
Oh man, yeah, some of the frat traditions and stuff. So
yeah,
for anybody who doesn't know, the pink belly is I don't know how many people out there are even going to be listening to this that wouldn't know, but you get your shirt pulled up, and I mean everybody just slaps your stomach, amount of years that you are, and hence pink belly. But good luck trying to get away. No, you can't fight it off. I know right around my birthday, I told everyone, don't even fucking dare, because and I actually didn't get messed with.
I didn't get messed with from there on out, but that was the year that they got me good.
I bet. I think there's a video of Hammer, one of our guys, getting held down because he was a brute.
Yeah.
But they had dudes on every arm and stuff, and they were just schwacking away.
Sometimes the bigger that you are, the worse it is, because that's the chance for everybody to get you, right?
Yep. They're all itching at it.
Yeah.
So you guys came back from that one. How was redeployment there?
It was kind of fast paced as well. We came back, and at that time, they basically stripped the battalion down. The 82nd was going through, we already had our orders again. So we came back, we went through EIB, and then it was kind of the rebuild. And, we started getting NCOs from other places. A lot of our guys left. So it was a fast rebuild, if you will. There was a time there where, I think understanding the context of that time too, like we had a lot of, they were letting everybody in at that point in time, right?
Yeah.
So we had a lot of just bad soldiers coming in. So there was a lot of build up and break down the platoon at the same point in time with getting rid of anybody that came through that just wasn't going to fit.
Yep.
At the time, we got the change of command as well. We got Sergeant Major Puckett in, who also got rid of a lot of bad leaders at that point in time. Our platoon sergeant being one of them.
Oh, they were messing around. Like, I mean, Puckett and Genio, dude, like even like it was that Bravo I thought at first it was the Bravo company mentality. You know, if you caused any trouble, you were out. But it really was. It was mandated from the battalion, and they were just anybody who didn't really belong there.
If you weren't a professional, if you will, you were gone. You know, if you weren't meeting whatever standards, at the time our platoon sergeant wasn't meeting height and weight standards. He had blown up before that deployment, but he was out of weight and he was gone.
Yeah,
instantly. Like Puckett was there for like a day and was like, "Bro, you're not fine. you're a shape, but not in shape.
You do not meet standard."
Yeah, you're a shape and not in shape. Gone. So you know we got broken down and rebuilt during that time, and thankfully we got a lot of great guys that came in, influxed in during that time.
Yeah.
Our platoon sergeant Carlos Santos being one of them was a god blessing. I mean, he was a true professional, the quiet professional that you hear about. But he built a family. And it was the first time, you know, I think the battalion at that time kind of became a family. You know, Puckett and Genio they trained us hard, right? They trained the hell out of us, but like they weren't yelling at us about your boots being bloused or something stupid about that. It was like, hey,
stuff that mattered.
Yeah, it was like, hey man, are you able to ruck? Are you able to shoot? Like, okay, like we're about to go get at it.
Yep.
You know, and it was that type of mentality. So we got a great platoon sergeant. And some of us younger Joes, you know, became team leaders and stuff there at that time. And then we got the influx of team leaders like Bragg and Mayer that came from 173rd. We had a guy, Bassard, that came from a striker battalion that was in Iraq that knew a lot of clearing houses. So we got a lot of different perspectives that came in the platoon at that time. And we were able to really create a family and really kind of gear up for the Argandab.
Yeah. Now, and I know I was going through the ITC cycle and stuff. I think I had come back, or I had joined the unit 3 months after they had gotten back or so. They were just moving out of those old barracks. So
our platoon was the platoon that we had a guy named Jeff Frawley,
okay,
team leader of mine. His father was the one that created the YouTube video.
I was just wondering where that came from, if it was, okay.
So that was Jeff Frawley's father was the one that created, you know, it was before YouTube or social media was really a thing. I mean, that's...
Well, that hit pretty good.
It did.
Straight to the top.
It went straight to the top. So we got back, literally, and there was a private first class Reedy who was, I want to say, he was in 3 Charlie, I want to say. It could be 1 Charlie. But he was the meme of the plunger.
Yep.
Sucking the poo basically out of the back drain, filling back up. So, you know, literally we got home from that 15-monther. We go to get into our barracks and we started flushing the toilets and stuff, and basically the floor exploded.
Yeah.
And his dad just happened to be there, videotaped it.
I'm totally putting this in the footage.
It went national, and before you knew it, that was right around the time when we got back. Was basically right before All-American Week.
I mean, literally, Bush showed up for
Bush was in our barracks.
There was guys from ours that they were getting, you know, there was Secret Service guys on the roofs and everything, and there was guys from ours that were getting sent back and forth from NCOs, but one of them showed up and was like, "Oh man, how'd you get through here?" And I guess he had like circumvented the Secret Service crew.
Yeah.
You found a way through, but that's when he was doing the walkthrough. It became a big deal. Like you said, national news. Yeah, I think you could still find it on YouTube.
Yeah, you can still find the video on there. Yeah, basically, it essentially got us all new barracks in a way, because we all got.
Yep.
They could
moved to the third BCT, right?
We moved to the 3rd BCT.
Yeah, because they were in Iraq.
But what had happened is at first 3rd wasn't gone yet.
Yep.
So they didn't really have anywhere for us to put. So basically, Spec 4 and above got to live off house. So everybody got per diem as if they were a married NCO or something like that, unless you were basically a private. So all of us were basically allowed to go get apartments and live like kind of civilians in a way.
Huh.
But it all stemmed from that because they had nowhere to put us.
Yeah.
And then 3rd got kind of latched on, and then as guys started filling back in, it kind of went away.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was an ordeal, if you will. It did not get us. It got us attention, but not necessarily the attention that we wanted, because we weren't loved from that one. 2 Charlie especially was not loved from that. You know, we brought a lot of heat, if you will, to all the command team's life. And I'm sure they had a lot of long nights dealing with that BS.
Well, I mean, anybody who's been in, you know, there was an incident, you know, and I guess this is the first time this one has been put out there in public, but there was an incident to where there was a shortage there was something with weapons, you know, and I raised a flag, but it was by calling my family, and then my family hit up one of the congressmen, and then all of a sudden, before you know it, a congressional, and so I know how that goes. Like, they have all this come down, and they're like, you know, there was even a kid in my basic training to where he had, I think it was a cousin or something of his that was in Congress, and he somehow snuck out during the night and called him on the payphones, called him collect. And the next morning, the drill sergeant comes in, like, just kicks that door and is like, all right, who the fuck is playing games here? And, you know, this guy flies into Sand Hill on a Black Hawk to inspect what's going on. And the funniest thing is, we were in Helmand province, and I knew who had done it. And this kid was actually a pay agent at that point. They moved him out of an infantry slot, and he was a pay agent with an officer rolling around with a suitcase of cash, giving out, you know, the money that they will for the guys that are just ridiculous. But I know how they treat, you know, which is, again, why I went through my parents. You know, they couldn't exactly pin it on me. They had an idea, you know, but yeah, congressionals, they don't like that.
No, it was we kept that reputation. Let's just say that. 2 Charlie became the bastard children, and we stayed that way. Our first sergeant hated us, and probably still hates us.
Now, what are you going to do?
Yeah, I digress. Who cares?
Yeah. So you come back, and then at that point, what rank were you at that point?
I was still PFC, actually.
Really? Okay, so you did a year overseas, and you were
I still wasn't even, I didn't even have enough time and grade to get my specialist rank.
This is the 82nd for you, though.
Yeah.
I know I had to wait the whole
I was,
as well.
let's just say 16, you know, like, what? No. I was probably about 20 months at that point in time in the military.
Yeah.
And it was, I remember being at the 82nd convention one time, and old soldiers coming up and asking me if I had been broken down because I was, you know, stacked here, combat stripes here.
Yeah.
And they're like, have you been broken down? Like,
when'd you get busted down in rank?
Yeah, I'm like, no, I just haven't even made specialist yet. And they're like, what? I'm like, yeah, this is life.
Right? I'm gonna suck.
Yeah, I actually got my first team as a PFC. Like, I was a PFC weapons team leader.
Well, yeah, because I mean, it was almost like into Fury, there was like that unofficial rank structure to where if you had that combat patch, you know, you were considered with experience, but rightfully so, honestly. Maybe not to the extent that they would from time to time. But yeah, there was the people with experience were definitely a different step than the others.
Yeah.
So I mean, ITC cycle.
Yeah, went into the ITC, and then we went to JRTC. Yeah. And that's when we got the change of mission, you know, from Iraq to Afghanistan. Then we went back into the mini ITC.
Yep.
That Genio and Puckett created for us to kind of get us ready to go to Afghanistan.
Yeah, with the mock villages and stuff on Bragg, and we were doing, you know, we really, you know, the aggressive stance that we were doing, a lot of that, the clearing houses to house, and then we ended up, you know, with that shift, doing some of the KLEs and those portions of stuff that I don't think I've ever seen any other time in the military, at least during my end of service and stuff. They really pushed. There was a lot in there. It was really jam-packed in, but I don't think we had much of a break at all in training.
No, I mean, probably by design, because I think they understood that they had a bunch of just, you know, savages, if you will, between the first and second, you know, deployment. They had a bunch of guys that were itching to go back, and they had a bunch of guys that were itching to finally go. So I think that was kind of by design, but I think it was needed. I think it really was needed. In terms of just getting a unit to really cohese, if you will, and like understanding what you're about to go through. You don't know the suck that you're about to go through, but I think especially in Puckett's case, like he'd been around the block so many dang times that he kind of knew what we were getting into and knew what kind of boss that we had that was going to get us into whatever he could get us into too. We didn't have a commander that was going to find a cush mission for us, right?
Yeah. That's for sure.
Jedio was definitely itching to get us in whatever he could get us into, and rightfully so. He knew he had a bunch of good war fighters, but it's like, I think Puckett realized, like, I got to make sure these men are ready to go at every level. I mean, remember, he even had the team leader course that he threw in there and brought all the NCOs out to the field and just trained just the NCOs. So there was a lot of that top-down learn not just your position kind of training, but learn everything.
Yeah,
because you don't know what's going to happen. And I think it paid off in a way.
Oh, it definitely did.
Yeah.
I mean, I was actually just talking with, and I know this episode's about to air, and by the time this one does, it had already gone off. But I was talking with Pat McNamara, and he was actually one of the trainers for one of the courses for that out there in the field. So they took all the NCOs and they were doing stuff to where they teach the NCOs, and then they brought it back down to us and ran some of those stress sheets and everything else. But that's where a lot of those the barrier training and where they were pushing strong wall. What was the two?
Tiger Swan was one of them, and there was another course that they sent guys through.
Yep. And that's where all of that came from. And I thought it was pretty cool to talk to him about that, or at least his experience as well. But to have that taught by the level to regular Army guys, I mean, it's really the amount of training that they push down to us, the amount of, I haven't seen much of that anywhere else.
No, I think they were, luckily both those guys had great careers and were very well networked.
Yep.
And they utilized their networking at that time to benefit us. They benefited their men, and it sucked while we were going through it, right? Like,
no kidding.
I mean, there was in the mini ITC. I mean, we did a 20-mile ruck in which I bled completely through my boots from rucking so far, but that got you ready for what the day-to-day 2 to 3 mile marches that we were going to be doing every day overseas.
Was that one of the ones with the follow-on attack on the village kind of thing?
Yeah, you ended at the village.
Yeah.
Essentially, we started at that the makeup fob that was out there in the woods. It was like the tent village. And
I'm trying to think of the name of it too right now, because
Warrior was a Fob Warrior. I think it
might have been.
I think it was Fob Warrior. And you essentially marched. You took your path. And there was basically ambushes and stuff along the way.
Yep.
And you had to basically get yourself all the way to the end.
Yeah.
And it took us about 20 miles that day with all the attacks and follow-ons and everything that you had to do, because it wasn't just like here's your mission. It's here's your mission, and we got other missions planned for you, because that's life.
Well, I liked how they did that, because it was almost like what it was exactly how the real shit goes. It's point A to point B, but then there's a follow-on, and then after that there's a follow-on. And it's, man, why are we doing this? I'm exhausted, and like you said, I bled through this, or I'm freezing, and I've changed socks 3 times. Well, guess what? This overseas. Oh, now I get it. This is what we've been through this before. Now I understand, and I understand what I'm about to be going through.
Suck now, so it doesn't suck as much later.
Exactly.
And it's still gonna suck, but it doesn't suck as much.
Yeah.
When it happens, because you're like muscle memory, if you will.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Whether it's wanted or not.
Yeah, wanted or not, it's muscle memory, and you're ready to go. And thank both of you for what you did for our battalion, because you guys did get us ready, and it's unfortunate that they were taken from us, and given to that guy, but it was,
Well, let's back up and go into that. So, heading out to the Argandab, what both of these books are about, and there's other books being talked about, being written. There's another book from the people that replaced you guys coming, the Sons of the Argandab by Joseph
Fontenot.
Fontenot.
Yeah.
I know I messed up his last name one of the other times, but I'm still waiting to go through that. I know he sent me a copy, but it's been.
I'm working my way through right now, and it's a story.
Yeah. Oh man. I mean, I just know with what we faced out there, and then seeing the 101st guys coming to replace us, and seeing some of the things that we did, and recognizing and being like, man, like, hey, this is what you need to plus up, and this is what you need to watch for, and hey, watch this and that. And I think a lot of the guys, I don't know if it was the same for you, but there was most of us when we had the secured transport out of there and stuff. A lot of us emptied out our med pouches and stuff. And I'm trying to think of the IFACs. And we took the tourniquets and everything else. And I was like, yeah, man, you guys are going to need this more than we do.
Yeah, I remember telling them, like, you put them in both pockets here, you put them in both pockets here, strap them to each other's backs. Like,
yep,
you can't have enough of those things.
Yeah. Well, that was TCCC that was doing a lot of that, to where there was a tourniquet in every pocket, and just because that's
we don't even strap them. We always had them strap them like on our guys' backs. Yeah. So if you come up, you just rip them right. The next guy rip them right off the back.
Yep. Yeah, smart way to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. The rubber band trick.
Yep. 100%.
So going into the Arghandab, I don't know. So I know Bravo Company, we ended up doing something in Helmand to where we were out of Lashkargah. Where did Charlie end up?
We ended up basically right outside of the Argandab in Panjwai.
Okay.
So that's right there, kind of right in on the corner of Kandahar as well. Panjwai was actually was another hotbed in Afghanistan, but we were kind of living the infantryman's dream. We were living with the Canadians. We were attached to the Canadians.
Yep.
And we were living at FOB Mason Gar.
Yeah.
And it was basically the side of a mountain, and they had 360 security around that bad boy. They had one of the tanks that if you shot an RPG or whatever, it had the recoil system on that would shoot right back.
Automatic, of course. Yeah.
So we were living the life. I mean, we were seeing contact on a pretty daily basis if we wanted to. We could. There was a village called Chowgar.
Yep.
There was another place called Three Tank Hill. There's Checkpoint 1 and 2. And basically, you could go to any of those places and get in a firefight.
Yeah.
And engage with the enemy, have the infantryman's day, and go back to the FOB. The Canadians were cooking us 5-star meals. We had ice cream. We had a gym. We had concrete bunkers with individual
life right there.
Oh man, it was living the life. I remember Genio coming one time, and it was when the change of mission was coming, and he was like, "Hey, we're gonna go get you guys in the fight." And I remember us sitting around, be like, "Sir, we'll go get you in a fight like right now. Like, where are you?
Let's go. Fight.
Yeah, like we're bored anyways. Let's go." And he's like, "All right, well, the rest of the battalion isn't experienced in this."
Yeah,
and we're like, "Well, we're fine. Like, don't take us.
Please, no.
Like,
this is nice.
This is nice. Like, we're gonna do our job, and we're gonna have fun.
Yeah.
But right when we got that change of mission, we were doing a BS mission, and we were route clearing for a route clearing package.
Yeah.
And we ended up taking our first casualties. We lost Marcus Tynes and James Nolan to an IED that basically severed a Humvee in half. Took both their lives, injured the gunner, Bobby Davis, pretty bad. Ken Munoz and Young were in the back seats. They actually returned back to the fight with us in the Argandab.
Mm-hmm.
But we took our first blow right before the Arghandab River Valley, which was, in a way, not a, I won't say a good thing, but it was a reality check for our platoon.
Yeah, it was a wake up.
It was a wake up call.
Yeah.
And coming out of that, our Joes weren't Joes anymore.
Mm-hmm.
The things that, as a team leader that time that I would have to harp on them about, I never had to say a thing about it anymore. They really understood that kind of echelon of what we were just talking about in training. They started doing that part. They started understanding my job.
Yeah.
And why I was saying the things that I was saying, and which allowed me to focus on the squad leader job, a platoon sergeant job, which allowed us to just be a more efficient platoon. There wasn't that nitty gritty yelling about the BS PCCs and PCIs. I didn't have to do that anymore.
Yeah.
Guys, they manned up, and if I spot checked them, they were glad to show me whatever they wanted to show me because they were ready. So it shifted our mindset to get ready for what was about to come.
Yeah. We had a lot. that exact same thing happened in Bravo with the day after Christmas. So I mean, we had been in a firefight in Helmand before, and where you're on that high, it's like, hey, we got our training down, we're good to go, and then you lose one of your guys in something like that, or you hit a mass cow, and it becomes real.
Yeah.
For lack of better way to put it, like it becomes real.
You're not untouchable
just
anymore.
Realize like, whoa, this is what all this was about.
Mm-hmm.
This is the training. This is why they were so hard on us about this stuff. Okay, I get it now. And you grow up real fast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And for the Joes especially, because all those that have been deployed before had kind of seen death in some way.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it wasn't in our platoon, it was with someone at the battalion, because the battalion had lost people in that 15-monther, but it wasn't home. When it hits home, it hits home.
Yeah.
It strips the pride away from everybody quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what happened there. And then we rolled into the Arghandab. We lost them on November 22nd, and we were in the Arghandab, I want to say right before Christmas, because I remember we spent Christmas in the Arghandab. I want to say we got there like the first week of December.
Okay.
We all rolled in the same time.
I was gonna say, yeah, like
because I know Puckett, talking with Puckett, we set up basically the battalion's mission. We set up like 9 or 12 fire bases overnight.
Yeah, it was crazy.
Yeah.
Like, and I know there was stuff like being written about it, like, oh man, like there was this surge into Kandahar, and they were worried about it. They were just like, this is going to be a bloodbath and everything. And we did what the 82nd does. We just came in force, took it almost overnight. Well, actually, it really was overnight.
We grabbed it overnight. I mean,
yeah.
We grabbed it overnight. We all rolled in, I think, the same night, set up on our night, and then we're in the fields, if you will, the next day. In our new uniforms, because we had the dirty UCPs, and we were out there rolling, and so we'll just say that was December 1st for the sake of arguing, and we were out there. We had the most northern. We were the furthest away from everybody, if you will. We were across the river from you guys.
Yep.
But we had the furthest north kind of outpost from the battalion.
Yeah. Well, there was and I'd have to break everything down and pull it all apart. And I'm still working on some of that. I know, shame on me for some of it, because I've been slowly building the picture. I know it's been nuts.
Yeah.
And understanding some of the stuff. There's actually another author out there. He was a professor at the Canadian War College who wrote a 3-book series about the Argandab. So it was actually the shaping operations from the Canadians beforehand all the way through. And I'm trying to, get the time to be able to look through those, just because I know we were actually, we're under Genio, but I think the way that command structure went is we were under Menard during the beginning of, at least. I know there was a whole, like, that situation when things changed over, as we're right about at that point in the timeline, to where things changed over, to where Puckett and Genio were removed.
Mm.
And that, I know that didn't set well with a lot of the guys. And I know it created a whole nother dynamic out there as well. That was just, you had someone else come in as the second. I know I talked about it in mine. I know one of the things that Andrew was just like, I didn't want to touch that situation in mine at all.
I don't think, I can't even say that I know a lot about it. I know bits and pieces that I've heard from different people and everything like that. But to your point, the bow hit hard.
Yeah.
You go from a sergeant major and a battalion commander who you really felt like had your back. It wasn't that they weren't harping on you, but they weren't harping on you on the little stuff. And it's like, if you did something and you had a reason for why you did something, they had your back.
Mm-hmm.
You weren't getting away with anything, but if there was a reason why and it was justified, they had your back to the end. And, there was also things for us and to Charlie, when our guys got blown up, they were the first ones at the roll call and cast.
Yep.
They were doing the little things. When we rolled into the Argandab, they were on the HHC clips, coming out to the outpost. Like, what do you guys need? Like, they didn't care that we weren't shaved at that point in time. They didn't care how dirty we were. It was like, what do you guys need? We need generators. We need food. We need water. Tracking. Next clip out. There's stuff there. And when you lost those two and we got that guy, it was gone. There was no more, we got your back. It felt like we were on an island, watching our P's and Q's about what we had to do to fight to win.
Yeah.
But also, like, if you stepped out of line, you were going to be in jail.
Yeah.
That was the real sense.
There's a different dynamic. I completely, I know that I actually talked with him about that before mine came out. You know, and it was an interesting, it was an interesting conversation just because it was like, look, I want to hear your end, but like, I know that a lot of this is going to be portrayed in the book as the way the men felt it.
Yeah.
Because that's Genio and Puckett, you know, Lieutenant Colonel Genio and Sergeant Major Puckett were there. They were, if we experienced a loss, if we needed something, you know, or it would just, they were making a rotation. They would be there. Like during ITC, they were out there. And I don't know whether the situation changed where we were, but I think the only time we saw Lieutenant Colonel Guy Jones one time, and it was during the incident with Staff Sergeant Brunkhorst. So where, I mean, it was kicked off by one kid hitting a toe popper that ended up breaking his leg, and then it just was one after another. There was Edinger after, and then Brunkhorst just disappeared. You know, it was the pink mist. You know, he hit a large charge in the ground, and they called in the dust one for that. You know, so I mean, it was just one thing after another, and that's when he finally flew out. You know, and it was like, what the hell's going on out here? And it was just like a complete different feeling.
Yeah, almost like, why are you guys hitting these bombs that are in the ground? Like, why do you not know they're here? Yeah, I can't recall seeing him at our base one time. I know that, you know, the Sergeant Major Gooden came out at the time. He came out to do the Dog and Pony show after, you know, he took over command. And, you know, I'm not blaming him, but ultimately, like, his presence lost our platoon sergeant because we were forced to go do a Dog and Pony mission to go pick him up at a base, to drive him up to see us, to make sure that we were fit to whatever standard he had. And we drove down a road that was heavily IED'd to go pick him up because he couldn't walk 500 meters, or someone chose to not make him walk 500 meters because he was a sergeant major. Where, you know, I feel in my heart, if that would have been Bert, it would be like, F you guys, I'm walking. You know, like,
yeah,
he wouldn't even been out there doing the Dog and Pony show because he was already there all the
yeah.
time. You know, he didn't need to see us because he was seeing us as much as he could see us with other missions, routine missions. We weren't creating special missions for VIPs, you know, and in that situation, in that battlefield, you didn't have time for that.
Yeah.
There was enough going on already. There was enough missions for us going on already. We didn't need a VIP mission for someone to come check your guard towers and make you stand at parade rest for, you know, why he talked to you about what he wanted to talk to you about.
I feel like we were shielded from a lot of that from Genio and Puckett because they had been there before. They were, I mean, really, essentially, they were war fighters.
Yeah.
You know, they were the guys that you want in the fight with you.
Yeah.
They're going to have your back. They've been there the whole time, and they know that stuff, you know, the uniform corrections and everything, where the idea behind it, the discipline behind it, you know, is the right answer. But in how it was being portrayed through them versus other elements of command was just different.
Yeah.
It was taken different by the men as well.
It was big boy rules with them. It was like, you know, hey, like, guys, if we go back in garrison, you know, or you go to CAF, be squared away. But you're out here with us, like, got it, tracking, been there. You know, don't bring shame on the battalion, and I ain't got shit to say to you, right?
Yeah.
That was kind of their mindset. Like, don't make me look like to be a bad guy, and I ain't got to say anything to you.
But it gets ridiculous when you have ISR in the sky, you know, coming around, and then you hear someone come over the radio, hey, Sergeant Major wants you guys to roll your sleeves down. And it's like, is that really what's important right now?
Yeah. I remember having, like, you know, Echelon come over and it's like, why aren't your boots bloused? And it's like, let me take you outside the wire and step over one wall, and I'll show you why my boots ain't bloused anymore, because you're going to rip your crotch all the way down your leg and I don't have any pants left.
Yep.
That's why we don't blouse them out here. It's not that we're trying to be out of center. It's so we don't have any pants left.
Yeah.
And blousing them and strapping knee straps on, knee pads on as tight as you can, that just constricts your pants.
Yep.
You know, we're stepping over 6-foot walls, jumping over them. Like, you need flexibility.
Constantly.
Yeah. So, like, it was that type of echelon, like, why am I even having this conversation with you?
Yeah.
You know, I'm out here with whatever clothes I got as it is.
Yeah, it's frustrating. It's frustrating, like from the ground level to the command level. But if you're feeling that they're not seeing that end as well, and again, like, just to be fair on that end as well, are they even really that aware of it? Are they seeing that side? You know, how much of that did they see or is passed down? And that, I really do think that there was a humility in at least the command from Genio and Puckett in that way, to where they could see it. Like you were just saying, why are you doing things this way? Like, tell us your justification behind it, as opposed to, that's not the way.
That's not the 80-second standard.
There you go.
You know,
Is that 600-1?
Yeah. You know, and I think to sum it up is, we were Genio and Puckett's guys. We were their men. And to Guy, we were just another command. It was just another command position. We were just pieces on the puzzle. We weren't his men.
I could see that, you know, and I mean, maybe down the road, you know, I'd love to actually hear it from that end too, you know, and who knows? Who knows?
Yeah, I mean, you know, I don't think some of us would listen, to be honest, but I mean, yeah, everybody has a job, and he had a job to do, so I'll give him the credit in that. He had a job to do, but from the way the men felt, he didn't have our back, and I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I get that. But you know, and that's a huge, that's going into something with someone, and even in ITC and JRTC, it was kind of the same thing as with overseas. They were out there. I remember specifically some of the Bravo company, we were out in the field for an ITC iteration to where it was below freezing in North Carolina. And we actually had a kid go down from hypothermia.
Mm-hmm.
But Bert was out there freezing right next to us and actually slept out there that night with us. I don't know many others. I actually can't recall anybody else during the rest of my time in the military that had done that had that sort of dedication to his men out there, to where he was sleeping in the dirt right alongside of us, being at the level he was at.
Yeah.
You know, and that right there, it just, I can't remember who says it out there, but there's one of them that are like, soldiers or the men will go through an extraordinary amount of pain. Just, you feed them, you have some relation between them and stuff, and they'll go through hell for you.
Treat them like they're humans, right? Like, he treated us like humans.
Yeah.
You know, he didn't treat us like soldiers. He wasn't easy on us. You know, he was not easy on us.
Oh, that's for sure. The standard in Two Fury was freaking, like, it was rough.
Yeah, but he treated us like we're humans. And, you know, like I said, if you had justification for what you were doing or what you were not doing, he had your back.
Yeah.
And it was like, track and Roger, let's move on to the next thing. Makes sense. Gotcha. You know.
So taking those skills and that leadership end and a view from them of what right looks like, and then that platoon sergeant that you're talking about there.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, how did that move forward for you in the Argandab? Because I kind of felt like, I think someone actually said something that you kind of almost took this de facto platoon. You were like the platoon sergeant, not platoon sergeant, in a way.
I think I was one of the bigger brothers of the platoon at that point in time. You know, like I said, I had been one of the only holdouts from the second deployment, or from the first deployment over the deployment. So it was kind of I felt like it was my platoon.
Yeah.
I also was kind of, you know, I'm the character that I'm not going to be not heard, if you will. But seeing the transformation of what Carlos taught us to, and being a family, and how to treat each other and be respectful, and to not just say yes to say yes all the time, because the command's telling you, was something I think I really took to heart. And I think when we lost Genio and Puckett with losing Carlos, I got angry in a way, and I got to the point of like, I'm not going to lose people over dumb stuff anymore. And if that means I got to lose what's on my chest, I don't care, because I'm getting out after this anyways.
Yeah.
You know, so in a way, I guess I kind of did take that position. I think ultimately Rosa became the platoon sergeant. You know, we got a platoon sergeant, Cartwright, who was he took care of us. He defected that top down stuff, but Rosa was the big brother because he was the weapon squad leader. He stood up to Fury.
Yeah.
You know, he came over from the 325. He stood up to Fury. So he was the big brother, and I was kind of his stepbrother, if you will, that was there to like enforce what he said and, you know, get on guys when they need to be get on, but also protect guys as much as I could. And I think, you know, thankfully, my ego, if you will, my position at that time, I was able to do what I could for my men in the aspect of what I could control. And I wasn't letting them get in positions that was going to hurt them any further than what was already going to happen to them. So at the brunt of some of my own recourse sometimes, yeah, I probably said and did some things that I shouldn't have done for the Army, but I was doing it for my men. And ultimately, I think that's still why I have some of the respect for my guys that I have, because I didn't care what was being said or told to me.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to do what the F they needed me to do.
Yeah, that's, I mean, the hard right over easy wrong.
Yeah.
Right. You know, it's, you could follow the letter to the book, but is that the right answer? You know, it's, yeah, I've met others throughout my career that were the same way.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, why are you this ranked? But like, you seem to be the one with the most experience. And it's like, well, he got stuck with a commander that,
Yeah.
you know, he told him how it was and he didn't like that. So he got passed over, you know, and that's, it's unfortunate and it happens. It seems to happen more than people realize.
Yeah.
But
I was not a yes guy. You know, I would tell you how I felt very quickly. Very, very quickly. And that it got me in some trouble sometimes. But, you know, I look back at my career now and I'm very thankful because, you know, I can pick up my phone right now and call any one of my guys and they'll probably answer the phone on the first or second ring. And I think that's truly the mark of a leadership position.
yeah. Oh man, you know, that's any one of those guys, you know, that shows up on there. I've got a bunch of them. I think it's anybody from that particular deployment is that I have them in that to where it rings no matter what, even if it's on Do Not Disturb.
Mm-hmm.
You know, just for, you never know, but also just that reason that it's like, if they're calling me for a reason. You know, and it's be there for your guys.
Yeah.
You know, and that's actually something that I tell other people out there too is, you know, have those communication lines open, touch base with them, even if it is just a small, how you doing or happy holidays and stuff. It does more than you think.
I tell people, if you're thinking about them, text them.
Mm-hmm.
If they pop into your mind, what does it stop you from saying, hey, what's up? How you doing? How's the kids? It doesn't have to your point, it doesn't have to be a purpose.
Yeah.
Just, hey, I'm thinking about you. And maybe that sounds corny or, you know, like I'm reaching out to my girlfriend or something, but, you know, it's like, sometimes that's all that person needs. And you don't know what is going on the other side of that phone.
Yes.
And if they're in your mind, there's probably a reason. You know, like, I'm not religious, I'm not anything like that, but I do believe in there's spiritual higher powers, and I believe that energy is a real thing. And if they're in your mind for some reason, and if you don't take that opportunity, you don't know what may happen.
Yeah.
It could be, you could have been that person that could have texted them that stopped them from doing something. Or you could have just been that person that they're having a bad day.
Yeah.
You know, and maybe that stops them from going home and fighting with their wife that prevents a divorce. You don't know what you're doing. You don't know what you're doing in the time that you're doing it, but if it's in your mind, do it. And if that's anything that someone can take away from this podcast and me and you talking, it's just, there doesn't need to be an agenda. There doesn't need to be anything other than, what's up?
Mm-hmm.
How are you?
Yeah.
Like, what are you doing? And that's all. We're all trying to do the same thing out here and get through life. So ask how their life is.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. Yeah, you're absolutely right. And you don't always know either, it sounds the mystical end of things and stuff. You don't know what the universe is putting in your path, or like why something's happening, or again, why someone's on your mind. Just follow it.
Yeah.
Why resist it? Who cares?
Yeah.
What have you got to lose?
What's the worst thing that happen? They're not going to respond to you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
Bigger than you scroll on Instagram or TikTok or whatever, right?
fill those gaps with something, useful, as opposed to.
It takes you the same amount of time to go like this to say, hey, what's up?
Yeah. No, absolutely. So Arghandab, things are getting hot. And you just said there too, you were already, was this the fact that when things started to happen and when the situation started to get tense to where you were like, I'm done, like you knew that was it? Or
I think it was kind of like the perfect storm of events. Like we lost Carlos in March 22nd, and we could kind of watch it go from you guys, right? Like you could watch the trail go up the valley. Like it was getting really, really hot for you guys around that time.
Yeah.
And then you started seeing ACO get it a little bit more. And then fast forward, I went on leave in April. And that's when like the valley was coming awake, if you will.
Oh yeah.
The leaves were coming on.
Mm-hmm.
And I came back from April, my leave, and I got off the truck actually the day my squad. I actually got to the company headquarters. As soon as I got there, my squad was out on patrol in Babur, and they hit an IED. Somehow or another, EOD just happened to be there with us. And I remember I didn't even have I had my weapon, I had like one mag, and I don't even think I had my nods hit. And I remember looking, I was in the talk because I just got there to, basically check back in, and it came over the radio, and I remember looking, I was like, I'm going, and like someone was like, you don't have any ammo, and I was like, I don't care, I'm going. At first, not liking me was like, I don't care what happens to him, and basically let me go. So I get off. I remember I got out the back of the Matt V, and my guys had hit thankfully it didn't go off. They hit a coffee can that actually wasn't in the ground. It was meant to go up and project out. It was like a jumping bean.
Huh. Okay.
So it went up, but it
sounds like it was meant for dismounts.
It was. Yeah. It was meant to go up and explode out, and thankfully it went up, but part of the device didn't go off, which had all the ball bearings and nuts and everything like that. So they evaded that one. And when I got back, basically from that, I was like, oh, it's on. And from then on, basically right at the beginning of May, all the way until we left at the end of July, it was every day.
Oh, yeah.
It was every day of some sort of, we're either hitting an IED, we're finding IEDs, we're getting shot at constantly, we're reacting to the other platoon getting shot at. It was just every day we were in contact.
No, we heard it. I even mentioned it in the book that like we were itching because we would hear these firefights and stuff going on across the river from us. And we were like, man, I'm tired of walking the minefields. Like, let us go over there and help Charlie out. Like, let's figure this thing out. And
and it wasn't just like, they started off, they were just baiting us. They were figuring out.
Learning tactics.
Learning our tactics, and it was started off with these small pop shots, and then it started off with these more complex, attacks, baiting us into IEDs, and it became, literally a game of chess, because it wasn't no longer like, let's do battle drill 1 alpha. It's like, if they're shooting at you, why is he shooting at me from there?
Yeah.
It's like, okay, we come up with a tactic, and we're going to bracket them with 203s, and then, use Moon to snipe them.
Yep.
All right, well, they figured that out. So now it's like, all right, how do you bound backwards and, move left or right?
The peel.
Yeah, and it's, so you're literally daily changing our tactics to change with their tactics. So it was this constant strategic fight with these guys of understanding, like, I can't just move on these guys.
Yeah.
Because there's a reason they're hitting me from this position.
Yeah.
So it's like, how do we bait them? We would do things like create these. I had a great assistant team leader in Joshua Brown, and me and him would sit for hours thinking about a route. How do we zigzag, get in a position, get them to bait us, bait them into shooting at us?
Yeah.
Bring in the Apache.
Give away the position, and then,
bring in the Kiowas, light them up light them up that way. How do we do that? Okay, they figured that out. All right, how do we use the snipers in a different position? How do we put them in a different spot and eventually work our way to the snipers so they hit us while we're getting towards the sniper position where the snipers can fire on these guys.
Yeah.
So it was this constant game of every day. And then, it was what people don't realize is like, you're fighting a plainclothes enemy. Like there'd be times that we would get to jump on them and they just drop their weapons and come out and talk to us.
Yeah.
And it's like, bro, I can look at your hands. You ain't no farmer.
Yup.
But they were like, oh, they got us today. They're on top of us. We'll just, throw everything down.
Fight another day.
Yeah, we'll throw everything down, let 2 guys carry all the weapons back to another play, and 4 of us will hop out of the woods and act like we're lost. What are we supposed to do? You know what I mean? Like you said, we can detain them for 48 hours and hope that they pop on a hide system.
Yeah.
But most likely that stuff isn't talking the right way. So,
Or even did they give you guys the swabs?
I forget. I know we had the hides.
Change color on there for nitrates and stuff.
Yeah, we would always do that. Yeah, we would test them for that type of stuff. But generally, those guys were smart enough to know that
Well, and that's why I was asking, was because the fact that when we would do that, they would instantly be like, well, I'm a farmer. It comes from the fertilizer. And they're not wrong either.
Yeah.
Because the ammonium nitrate wasn't illegal or was still being sold in the markets and stuff. It hadn't made its way out of the country yet.
So there was nothing you could really do with them,
No,
and
they're not dumb.
They're not. No, we killed all the dumb ones in the first invasion. Like, at that time, we were fighting experienced fighters that knew how to fight.
Yep. And not to mention too, did you guys ever have any of the like an experience where you'd run someone through the hide system and it would be like, oh, hey, last seen in Pakistan or last seen in Iraq, and you're like, oh, I know why you're here.
Yep, we would have that. And you tag them and bag them, if you will, take them back, and they get sent up to to someone that would be like, well, we don't have enough, and they gotta you'd see them a week later on down the road.
Yeah.
I mean, we did it all. We captured motorcycles, and we tag the motorcycles, like take them back, hold the motorcycles, put GPS chips in the motorcycles, which also led to some of the ODA guys and stuff doing some big hits in the Argandab, because you could track people around Kandahar and everything like that. But it wasn't like we were having that direct effect. They were smart enough to circumvent us and fight us just like we were fighting them. I mean, it was they had bombs and we had airplanes.
Yeah, no, but to be able to run, especially with such small numbers, run an effective campaign, an effective military campaign against a modern day fighting force with what they had, that's crazy.
Yeah, you take a $20 bag of HME and blow up a $2 million MRAP.
Yeah.
I mean, yellow jug, some HME, and some nuts and bolts.
I know you were talking about before the different tactics that you would use in conjunction with the sniper teams and stuff. And I just wanted to point out back here the hat. You want to talk a little bit about?
That's the hat that Chris Moon's mom gave me for the Chris Moon Foundation. So as you know, Chris Moon I think he was a beacon of light for our Italian battalion. I mean, the kid was just special in every way. He was a baseball star that was drafted by the Atlanta Braves and elected to, forego all of that to come join us because he felt that he had a higher power. And, there's rumors of him, doing the stalking phase at the sniper score standing up. But I don't think any of that matters as much as the impact that man had on all of our lives over there. He was a dude that always had a smile on his face. You got to work with him too.
Yeah.
Carried himself as the true quiet professional, but when he got out there, man, he could put in some work. He was a special shot, and he was someone that we relied on heavily. I mean, we really did, because he had the ability to change the game in the long range. They would shoot at us through murder holes. So basically they'd take holes and they'd knock them out of the bottom of walls to where they'd be standing up on one side, but it'd be like waist high on our side.
Yep.
And they would shoot through them. And I mean, he was good enough to shoot guys through those holes, and effectively change the game to the point that, they were looking for him.
Yeah.
And they finally got him one day as well. I mean, the IED that killed him, there was probably 15 soldiers that crossed over the IED before he crossed over it. And when he crossed over it, they clapped it. And it ultimately took his life. And, I think that was we were basically done at that point in time, but I know that was a blow that I think probably put the whole battalion to their knees.
Oh, I remember being out there and getting the word of, you know, as we would have things trickle around and stuff. And, you know, like you were saying, he had worked with Bravo in Helmand Province and then some in the Arghandab before he went over to work with you guys. And everything that you're saying, great guy. Always upbeat about stuff, no matter the situation and everything. And just really, yeah, I don't think of any other way. You put it perfect there. Beacon of light.
Yeah.
Maybe it really was. Just always had a smile. Good guy.
Just built like a specimen too. Like you look
Yeah.
at some guys and you're like, oh, he's got it. You know, the eye test is a real thing sometimes.
Yeah.
You know, and you see him like, oh man, that's
For anybody that does it like with a shooting background and stuff, we're talking those murder holes and stuff. 6 to 8 inches by 4 to 6.
yeah, enough to get a barrel in there and traverse it, because that's all they do is stick their gun in there and traverse it.
But to hit that at distance, you got to be good.
Under a firefight,
Really good.
yeah, in a firefight with extreme stuff going on, yeah. And I mean, he did it on more than one occasion. I mean, and I've watched him shoot a dude off a back of a motorcycle. Yep, motorcycle moving. He dropped the guy off of, and I mean, he saved a lot of our lives.
Some of the best and brightest, and then to have, I know for me it was tough when Andrew sent forward. You know, he's like, well, yeah. I asked him about the manuscript, and I was like, man, can you just like send it forward? Let me see what you got. When he was having some of the doubts about it, and when I got to that portion, I had to stop.
Yeah,
you know, just because I started feeling, you know, really. You have that in there, but having experienced all that, but then personally knowing that person, you know, it hits hard.
It hits in a different way. And I mean, I'll always hold myself accountable for his death. I don't think that'll ever change. And it touches. It's, you know, losing anybody sucks, but when you really lose that guy, if you will, or, you know, that the person that has it all and you can tell can do it all, but doesn't care, you know, just wants to be there with it. I think it hurts a little bit harder, right? I mean, the saying "the good die young," that really is a real thing, because it's like sometimes why wasn't a guy like me? You know what I mean? Like why wasn't it, you know, another a-hole, something like that? You know, because you lose the good ones, and he'll always be one that, you know, I'll hold responsible myself for.
Well, this is the thing too on your wrist. You got that right there, which I have. You know, I know it's some people look at it one way where it's a little macabre, you know, to where they're like, well, why would you wear the memory of your dead friends on your wrist? But it's like, why at the same time, that's kind of a grounding thing for a bunch of people as well. It's like, this is why I'm out here. Or maybe if I'm in a tight situation or having a tough time, why am I doing this? You know, for the memory of those guys. Because they're not out there. They were some of the best and the brightest, but they're not out there able to do that. So, I mean, if anything, at the very least, that being that reason to bring you forward.
That, and, you know, Bragg says it one of the best for me is he says that every man dies twice. The first time you die, and the second time they stop saying your name.
Yeah.
And for me, you know, if everything that these guys did for my guys, everything your guys did, if we stop carrying on their legacy, why did they die?
Yeah.
You know, what did they die for? If we, the guys that were right there with them, can't even hold ourselves up high enough to carry on their legacy, who else is going to do it?
Yeah.
And to your point, like, there is times that I'm like, why am I doing what I'm doing? You know, why don't I just do it? And you look down and it's like, God, because these guys right here, they already did it for me.
Yeah.
So it's my responsibility to carry on for them.
Yeah.
You know, to be there at moments that they can't be at.
Yep.
To pick up the phone and call my brother that they can't pick up the phone and calling.
Because you know they would be.
Exactly. They were that type of guys. You know,
yep.
If I wasn't the guy to step up for my platoon, I let Carlos down. Carlos taught me how to be a true leader. So when Rosa wasn't there or Rosa was doing something else, if I wasn't the guy there doing it, I'm letting him down. You know, I'm not carrying on his legacy. And then, you know, we talk about this a lot in the military community. It's legacy and what people have done for you, but I don't think a lot of people really truly want to push forward in that avenue of living life for the people that are not living their life anymore.
Yeah.
You know, people don't tell you about war. Like, I mean, the war's a generational effect. You know, I've had the fortunate benefit of being at my platoon sergeant's son's wedding, being in his wedding. I should have been there. You know, I'm thankful that I was there, but I shouldn't have been there in the way that I was there.
Yeah.
I should have been sitting in a pew. You know, not standing in his father's place. You know, having his son on the back of a boat look at me in the chance and say, what would my father say to me right now?
Yeah.
People don't fucking tell you about that shit.
No.
They don't get you ready for what, it's not what we just went through, it's what we continue to go through. You know, we've had other Gold Star children that have had, you know, suicidal ideations and stuff like that. It's like, they wouldn't be doing that if their father was here.
Mm-hmm.
When I kill myself, they definitely know it. You just keep losing more and more links, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, to your point, if people are wearing that for the wrong reason, shame on them.
Yeah.
If you're not wearing that and you're not carrying on for your brothers, shame on you.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's why these things exist.
Yeah.
That's why we carry these stories on, and these stories they're important, and it's not just to us or the memory of them, but it's important to so many more. That ripple effect.
Generational thing.
It really is. Yeah. And keeping those names alive and remembering it, using it as not in a way as a crutch, but as a grounding.
Yeah.
You know, what would they do? And I like to think that, you know, in a lot of instances and stuff, I mean, really with some of the experiences I've had and everything else, we are all one.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and this is all, they're still there and they're seeing this. You know, or experiencing, or, you know, it's all of this comes full circle. Paratroopers don't die, they just slip away.
Yep.
Kind of thing. But, you know, these stories are important. It's important to be told among each other, told to other people, and important to learn from.
100%.
You know, and, you know, I'm glad you're one of the ones out there with that type of retrospect on it, or that type of insight, as opposed to being someone that stands on it like a platform, you know, using it to their own gain. You know, that's actually one of the things that we were talking about before, that I found really respectable of the two Charlie guys, is that, you know, you had been approached by other people before about your story, and the bulk of you sat up and said, no, this is our story. Like, it needs to be told by one of us, or it needs to be told in a certain way. We don't know what your agenda is. In seeing how many different things out there do hold an agenda or a narrative, and truth belongs out there, not a narrative, or not a something twisted to someone's own gain, or to be used for personal gain. This is that universal truth, and it's solidified, and it's something that happened. It's something to learn from, but it's also something that grounds a lot of other guys. That person didn't die in vain.
Mm-hmm.
It's not something to stand on and you know, I was there when this happened. No, you might have been there when it happened, you know, but you're integrating that into like what you're doing now.
Yeah.
I know. I was going to say, is like, we're at this stillness point here, because it's a solemn conversation there. And it's something that a lot of people out there face, and especially in our GWAT generation, and then seeing some of what's going on out there now.
Yeah. It's hard to trust people. It's hard to understand, you know, everyone's story. And it's tough, because you don't know, you know, we have, to your point, we've had people reach out and say, you know, we want to do this with you, and we want to do that. And, you know, we take everything as to Charlie, and we put it out to each other, and we let it simmer, and then we talk about it. And if there's a no with a justification behind it, it's a no. You know, if it's just a guy being whiny, it's like, okay. But if all of us are sitting there saying, like, questioning it, we're not going to do it. And I think that is why, thankfully, this family of two Charlie guys has stayed close. We're missing a few, and I hope that we get those guys on the train as well. So we haven't had everybody, and I want anybody out there to know that, like, the Two Charlie stuff, if you're part of that family, you cross through, like, there's a seat at the table for you. There will always be a seat at the table for you, and when you're ready to sit down on the table, we're here. And it doesn't have to be, that you like me or hate me. It doesn't matter. You don't just be there for whatever guy that you were there for the Two Charlie with, and that's what I think is the most important, because there's so many relationships, right? Like, you've been in a platoon. There's so many relationships with a platoon, and to sit in a room with all your fellow brothers and watch them smile and laugh and carry on is, you can't put a ribbon here. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You can't put some V device on my chest and say that means something. That is what means the world, is watching the camaraderie, watching the brotherhood, and just watching guys laugh.
Yes.
Is what it's about. And that's why I think we do the things that we do in our platoon. And if I can encourage anybody out there to hold your group of men that way, it's just treat them all like family and friends, and mutually talk about, how can we get together? How can we do this problem together? How can we see this person?
Yep.
And guys will catch on. If you're doing it collectively with, like you said, without an agenda.
Yeah.
Because guys are going to sniff out an agenda.
Oh yeah. You can smell bullshit.
Like,
that bullshit meter goes, woo!
Yeah, you just sniff it out quickly, right? Like, and it doesn't take but one time of you throwing some BS up before someone's going to call you out on it.
Yep.
And guess what? There's no rank anymore.
Little different.
Yeah. A little different when you got to talk to people on the same level, no matter what level that you're on.
Yeah.
You got to treat everybody the same now.
Or even just the amount of transparency these days that we have.
Yeah.
You better watch out, because somebody's always watching.
Exactly. So, I mean, that's what I think we hold near and dear. And I think it's why Bragg was able to do what Bragg was able to do, and go around and visit so many people and be welcomed into the homes. And, for me to be able to catalyst some of the calls and help bring us together, it's taken all of us,
And that's what I wanted to go into next, actually. I know we kind of like naturally almost got there.
Yeah.
And I'm not leaving we are kind of just going to move past it. But if you want to read about the deployment, read it in the book, Devil's Playground. But from there, the wedding, and then the down in Fayetteville, the launch that you guys had down there. And I know that you had said you guys did it in a panel fashion, to where you had the guys that all had showed up. I mean, how many Two Charlie did you have down there?
So step back one step in November for Veterans Day, we went to Fort Collins, Colorado, which is where Bragg was kind of based out of.
Yep.
And we held a reunion there, at kind of a book release party.
Yeah. Saw the pictures.
Yeah. We had, I think, 26 of us, and I want to say it was about 32 with some of the Gold Star family members. With all the wives and everything, I think we had about close to 50 of us come out there.
That's amazing right there.
It's very amazing, because it's not even just like us now too. Like, the wives are now forming relationships, and like, you see them kind of off in the corner talking, or, even having conversations about like us, like, why, are you experiencing this with your husband? Is he this way? And it's more of these touch points than just us. So it's become this bigger family, which I think is very, 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 very rewarding, and very just cool to witness, just to watch people come together in so many different fashions, not just us. But yeah, we had all of us out there, and that was a cool moment, that we got to kind of relive some of the nostalgia, during the deployment. Kristen Santos had sent forward a bunch of stockings and stuff, and Carlos made us all do those for Christmas. So being Veterans Day this year, right before Christmas, she resent all these stockings out to Fort Collins, and we had to go back through and sit with our stocking and take a picture. This time it was with Rosa, because Carlos wasn't there, but Kristen got to stand there, kind of in her husband's place, as we each got our stocking. So that was a a cool little moment to like full circle the family back around, and and the next guy in line was now the Santa. So that aspect, and then we moved to Fort Bragg, and we did the panel thing at the Airborne Museum. We got to go out and visit the guys, the new 2 Charlie, if you will.
Yeah.
We were, and it was perfect because we were trying to get them to come to the Airborne Museum, but they're in their ITC phase.
Yeah.
So I got with the commander, and he was like, I don't know if I can do this. And I was like, why don't we come see you in the field? And he's like, would you really come see us in the field? I was like, absolutely, we will. So, we were at the battalion area at 6 o'clock in the morning, just like a regular day. And there was a mill van there for us, take us out to the woods. And we got to catch the guys literally crawling out of their sacks first thing in the morning. And it was a cold Fort Bragg morning. And
That's awesome.
we got to be the old timers coming out and sharing a little bit of, about us, our experiences with transitioning, the PTSD thing, the purpose aspect, and got to really talk to them about what they're doing now, why it matters, some of the stuff that we talked about, like growing up from being a team leader.
Yeah.
Got to tell them some first, account experiences of like, hey, I got it. Like, you're pulling security at a tree right now, but that tree is a real thing, and kind of explaining it and kind of hoping that we, have some type of impact on our next generation.
Mm-hmm. You have more of an impact than you think, especially with something like that. Do you remember when they took Rock out before we deployed?
I don't.
Okay.
Remember
I remember, and I don't know if like maybe
I might have been gone on Advon, or
Okay.
maybe I just don't remember it, but
yeah, because I remember that. I remember a few of them, that they had, and it was kind of did you experience anything to where it was almost like you were looking back at yourself in a way?
yeah, you could see the same look of like disdain and grumpiness, and like the suck, right? Like, why am I doing this? But it was cool in an old timer way. Like, you really start to feel like an old man. You know what I mean? It's like, man, I was you. Like, I literally was you.
Yep.
Like, I was carrying that 240. Like,
Yeah.
this and that, and it was nostalgia, and it was even just walking through Area J was like the sight smells and all that type of stuff coming out. You know what I mean? Like, why am I like even
You can start tweaking out. I'm not.
I went over and got a cup of coffee. You know what I mean? Like, I went and got a cup of coffee, and it's the same burnt coffee. It's like they've been recycling the same grounds for 30 years. Get every bit of caffeine we get out of this bean, and it's just everything, everything stays the same, but it changes. They got cooler gear, they got cooler weapons, but they're still, we got a commander there that was our commander, one of the BCO POs, and he's doing the Two Fury thing with those guys right now. And he's treating it like Genio and Puckett did, and it was refreshing to see that what we've done isn't in vain. The whole battalion area was a lot about us, mainly about us.
Yeah. A lot of people freak out or have been like, dude, are you like, really? It's almost like it's a legend over there. It's wild.
Yeah, and it's a lot about our heritage now, and it's that's humbling to see. I think when we were going through it, right, you thought you were just going through the war. You thought you were just like everybody else, but kind of stepping back now, and it's like we're kind of the OGs of war, if you will. We got to play the game at the highest level, and now we're kind of looked upon.
There was throughout the rest of my career, like people I talked to and stuff, I had never really thought anything of it, but then talking with different SF guys, to where a lot of people just hold them in high regard and esteem, and it's not like I'm not downing them at all. Like, that to do that job and everything, but there was a lot of them that came out and looked at me and they were just like, this is all in a year? Like, are you kidding me? Like, I in my entire career, I haven't experienced that much and stuff. And it just really was. I don't know whether to the timing, the situation, that point in the war that it was, but we really did. We experienced a hell of a lot, in that amount of time.
We got to play the Super Bowl war, if you will,
That's, oof, whichever way you take that one, man.
I mean, it is. You don't, you know, if you've been on multiple deployments, you probably have seen yourself in some situations like nothing's going on, or it just depends on your sector and the mission and everything that's going on. And yeah, the SF guys, like they've had some cool missions and they've done some great things, but there's also had a lot of BS missions and a lot of stuff that they are like, why did I do all this to do this? You know, I mean, I have a friend from high school. She married an SF guy that was actually in the 101st that replaced us.
Mm-hmm.
Then he went on to do SF. He's like, bro, I saw more in that Argandab deployment than I saw in my entire SF career.
Yep. And that's not to like downput other people, because that's another thing too, is like I tell a lot of them, like, we just experienced a lot in a small amount of time, and it's atypical, but at the same time, these stories that happened, you know, and these incidents that happened are echoed across the GWAT, whether it was in like, you know, 1 or 2 incidents that somebody experienced, as opposed to, you know, 4 months of this or 6 months of this. But this is stuff that's echoed across, and this is things that people are facing in their everyday lives, you know, or had faced at one time or another during war, you know, and across the board, some of the same things that the troubles and stuff that guys are facing now, whether it be to from addiction or PTSD or marital problems, you know, are all stemming from these. But it's really that entire generation is facing a lot of that.
Yeah.
You know, and it sucks to see. But I do think that some of what you've had a part in with Charlie Company, with recreating those support bonds and stuff and reconnecting with everybody, is that, from things I've seen anyway, and reconnecting and the things that I've seen with Charlie Company, and looking at the writing on the wall of like, all right, what does the future hold for us as veterans, or, you know, us within our own little bubble? What are we looking at here? And I really respect the fact that I feel like you guys got it right in that way, of really keeping a tight-knit family together and keeping in touch with one another. I mean, how did you go about, like, did you hold like a call-out roster? Were you part of a Facebook group?
There was always kind of a running Facebook chat that kind of had been there, but it was kind of to put out bad information, really. You know, it really wasn't, we weren't talking.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think it was just that time. I think timing was everything, kind of like what you said. The Bravo company came out. There had been times throughout the decade, you know, that I had said, hey guys, what do you think about getting together? And I'd get a few, or I'd say, hey guys, what do you think about doing this? And you get a few. And it was, I think, the catalyst of, we had our first suicide that happened right at the beginning of COVID. We had COVID, which I think changed for a lot of people.
A lot.
You know, I think COVID did a lot. And then we had the Bravo Company book come out. And I think when all that kind of happened, it shifted a lot of people's perspective. You know, I think everybody had ran, you know, for so long, and we're just running.
Yeah, I was.
Yeah, I was too.
Yeah.
And I think everyone just stopped for a second, probably because of COVID. You know, you're forced to stop. And it was like, maybe we should talk. And then it was just like, as soon as we talked, everything started coming out for everybody about what has been going on for the last 10 years. And, you know, I think when you have people that are willing to open up themselves and say, you know, I've been divorced, I've had addiction issues, I've been in VA counseling, other guys are like, all right, man, it's not just me too.
Yeah.
And when it comes from your own within, especially being a leader or someone like that, when you have the leaders that kind of let off and like, you know, guys, I've been sucking, you know, I haven't been right in a long time. I think it starts to allow other guys to say, all right, I ain't been right either. And I think it was that perfect storm of everything that kind of happened, and it happened at an perfect time, if you will. And that's kind of what brought us all back together. And, you know, and since then, it's I could safely say for myself, my life's been better. And I know for a lot of other guys that have come out and said, they're like, not a lot's changed, but my outlook's changed.
Yep.
I know that I got someone to call again to talk to, or I know that I'm just not struggling.
Mm-hmm.
Because, it's not like we're all fixed, right? Like, it still sits in our mind every day.
Yeah.
It's not like you just wake up one day and you're fixed. And I think that's what a lot of guys think, that like, I'm going to go to counseling, or I'm going to, do this, and like, it's going to go away. It's not going to go away.
Mm-hmm.
Like what you saw and what you went through, it's burned.
Yeah.
It's burning your soul. And now it's like, okay, how do I adjust life? Give yourself a little grace. Give your brother a little grace, and help each other move forward. And I think that's kind of where we've been, and I hope and pray that we continue to stay in that way.
I mean, there is a feeling behind all this. There really is. I know, like you were saying, COVID changed a lot of things. And one of the biggest things with other veterans, at least, and some with myself, like, we have a tendency to self-isolate, especially away from the flagpole or the support group and stuff that we've got. We'll self-isolate, and this isn't something you could do alone, and by reconnecting and by forming those groups again, you really are. Just being there for someone to reach out to already is big, especially when somebody has nobody.
Yeah, I think a lot of people get caught up on thinking, and we kind of talked about this earlier, like, you got to do a lot. You don't have to do a lot.
Nope. You really don't.
It takes someone to create a Zoom link. It takes someone to text each other. And then it takes you to click on that Zoom link and show up.
Yeah.
There's guys that get on that don't say a word.
Yep. And they're just there to hear it.
They're just here, and they laugh in the background.
Yeah.
And they're the ones that text later on, hey man, I really needed that.
Mm-hmm.
I needed to hear you guys talk.
Yeah.
Because life sucked.
There was something that one of the Bravo company guys by the name of Dave Huth had created. Me and him had talked, and I know I put the web end of it together, but it was really all the concept. Everything was really him for something that we turned into what was called veteran peer groups. I actually retained the website just because of like how effective it was. I know we've stepped back from that, but people have still continued to talk. But I really do hope that in one way or another we sort of revive it, because, like you're saying, that exact same thing. When you get the guys together, there's just something there. Anybody from Two Fury, anybody from that battalion, anybody from that conflict, or just veterans in general, there's a different energy there.
Yeah, it's a trust factor. The trust factor is there, and when you're able to speak freely with one another and not be judged or worried about what's going to happen in your life because you said the wrong thing, then it allows you to get stuff off your chest.
Well, that's one of the biggest things in that I hear. There's so many fake people out there, and fakeness, whether it's because someone has their own agenda and whatnot, to where when you have that real connection, there's other business people and stuff that I know, to where they're like, man, you're just real.
Yeah.
And I've heard that about other veterans. Man, I like being around veterans or hearing that, and because they're real, they'll tell it how it is. And it is that there's something to that genuineness out there, to where they know that it's not part of an agenda, and it's someone who actually gives a shit.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I don't want to see another one of my guys be buried in the ground, for the wrong reason.
Same.
And that's, ultimately where I want to just remain. I don't want to attend another funeral unless you're old.
Right. Yeah. These reunions don't need to be from a suicide.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
No, I agree there, man. What's some of the stuff that you've seen out there? I mean, have you ever talked to anyone down off the ledge or anything, or?
Yeah, we had a guy that throughout the book writing thing was on a bad path. You could tell he was on a bad path.
Yeah.
The irrational calls, the irrational weird text messages, the weird stuff that's coming out. Ultimately, he was suicidal. He didn't want to admit that he was suicidal, even though they're like, bro, you're suicidal. He ultimately got drunk one night and came home and turned a gun on himself and shot himself and didn't even know what happened when he woke up. And it was just, he got himself down so many wormholes and would hit that bottle. And when you hit that bottle, he turned into a different person. And,
Yeah.
you know, unfortunately he attempted. I know there's been a couple other guys that have said that they've thought about it. I mean, hell, I've considered killing myself. I mean, you know, it's not something I'm proud of, but I mean, you get so low sometimes because, you know, you lose so much, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, what else do I have left? You know, why am I still here?
Yeah.
I'm just a burden on everybody else. And I think that's where some guys get so far down, and they don't think to reach out, or they think that they're reaching out as burdening other people or whatever it is. And you just, you ultimately do it because you think you're helping.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm not part of the team doing anything anymore. I'm just existing. Fuck this.
Yeah.
You know, it's not worth it anymore. The struggle. Yeah.
Yeah. The struggles. Why am I struggling? You know, man, like,
yeah.
So, yeah, I think across all the bowels, I mean, the addiction, the drinking, the divorces, you know, I don't think we've had many guys in jail. We've had one guy in jail, which was a funny story because I got contacted. Somehow he was in jail in North Carolina. He was in 2 Charlie, ended up getting moved out during the middle of deployment to 3 Charlie, I think. Got himself into a situation, and he was one of the ones I was pretty hard on him when he was in. And he got arrested, and a group got in touch with me to go help him out because they could get him some counseling and get him basically out of the jail situation if he took some of this counseling.
Yeah.
So I got tasked with the paperwork, and I go show up at the jail, and he comes walking in, and he's got the cuffs on, and you know, he got his
you here?
He got his head low, and he looks up, and he sees me, and it's like, you can tell he wanted to do push-ups. Like he was like, oh man, it's like you. Why? What's up, bud? You know, just, what are you doing?
But I mean, you know, on that end, you know, from someone who was scuffed up by you and stuff, but then here you are bailing him out, you know, one way or another.
Yeah.
You know, that just shows that, you know, that didn't matter from before. You know, you're someone who gave a shit. You care about these people.
Yeah. I mean, we all, you know, hell, I could have been arrested many times over the last decade, you know, for
I mean, both, man.
doing, you know, getting to the bottom of the bottle and doing some wrong stuff. And just thankfully, you know, I've been arrested once, but thankfully,
It happens.
Yeah.
It happens.
Thankfully, you know, I've been lucky. So I walk it out like, hey, you got yourself in trouble, man. Like, it is what it is. Like, here's your out. You know, I need you to sign this out.
Yeah.
And you're gonna go get yourself some help, and you're good, or you're just sitting here and suffer. You know, and be thankful that you got some people that are willing to help you. So I suggest that you go sign this paperwork. And that was it. And from all accounts that I know about him, he's done well since then. And you know, he got his life back in this situation. So
yeah, I know that you know, a lot of what you were saying there, the addiction. You know, I've seen some of that end too. Did you ever see anything from? I know the guys that I've seen it from, a lot of them seem to stem from the ones that ended up in Walter Reed, you know, or in the VA system and prescribed opiates for pain.
Yep.
Same deal with.
Same day. Yeah. With guy that got shot in the face. When I reconnected with him, and he since fell off the radar. I don't know where he is, but when I had met with him, he had gotten himself clean. But he said he was on a very, very hard road for a long time. It was due to that. He got in, you know, had the oxys, and then once the oxys were taken away, pain was still there. So then came the heroin, and there came the slippery slope.
Yeah.
And I know another guy that had been on scripts for a long time that he'd weaned himself off. He was an addict, joined the military, got blown up, was basically going back down that path, and seemed like he was able to stop himself, and got himself straightened back around. I think his kids were the biggest impact in that, or he probably would have kept going. But there's definitely that, you know, the VA wasn't always there to help those guys. You know, they were there to,
Yeah.
you know, kind of fix them, but
Put the Flex Seal patch on the.
we 100-mile-per-hour taped their legs back together and, you know, told them to roll on.
Yeah.
And it
Doesn't work like that.
no, you know, the military does a really good job of building us up, right? They don't do a really job of forming us back to what we need to be in any aspect. You know,
Yeah.
wounded, retransitioning or anything, they don't take care of you in that aspect.
Well, I kind of feel, and I know this is, you know, personal opinion and stuff, but again, we build these support systems and then we go through this traumatic events and stuff together. So we're sort of, in a way, trauma bonded. But it's a support group. You've been through hard stuff together. But, you know, is it really the military's job or the VA's job? They haven't really figured it out. And I know a lot of the stuff that I've been personally looking into, you know, you look at stuff that the Romans did in the past, but also really, quite honestly, my personal opinion, I think the Native Americans had it right. And if you look at what the war parties and stuff would go through once they came back to try to reintegrate into the tribe and stuff, there was an actual specified process to where I don't have it in order, but there's something where you're sitting around telling stories. You are literally talking about the things that happened to you, getting it off your chest with your brothers that went through the same stuff on the battlefield, and you're talking amongst them and other warriors there. And then they go through the sweat lodge thing, which offers, again, like a psychedelic type experience, which I've got that episode out there with that. In which I really do. I hope that some of those guys can get into some of those therapies, because I feel like there's merit there. And there's something to be explored there. You know, and there was just a process, and I feel that this stuff has existed, and then it's almost, you know, either through the American way of, well, just take a pill, it's a catch-all, or that type of thinking, and it's like you kind of got to go back and look at how things were done in the past, because you look at the warfare that they experienced, but they didn't experience the same type of, or, you know, maybe it just wasn't documented. You know, I don't know, but I do know that I feel like there was something to that and a reason why they did that. You don't hear of the same instances happening within the tribes. But heck, to be seen.
Yeah. I mean, I know, to your point, the VA just, here's a pill. You know, I mean, my personal relationship with that, you know, I was in a down place, and, you know, they wanted to give me the SSRIs, and, you know, took them and came back for my follow-up, and I was like, hey, man. He's like, how are you doing? I'm like, I'm numb. You know, like, you could break in my house and I'd probably thank you for, you know, stealing everything off.
Yeah.
And I was like, you know, can we go down on a dosage? Well, sir, the goal is to get you to this amount of milligrams. And I remember looking at him, I'm like, why is there a goal to get me to any type of milligrams?
Yeah.
Like, isn't the goal to get me off of these?
Whoa.
I should be, you know, like, I should be utilizing these to temporarily, right?
Yeah, it
like,
sounds like they're creating dependency.
Yeah. And he was like, well, no, we want to get you up to this milligram. I'm like, you're not getting me to anything. I'm getting off of these. Like, and he's like, well, we'll give you another pill.
Red flag.
So yeah, literally, you know, I'm not stupid. I'll go out to the car, Google like any of us. It's the same compound. Different name, same compound. Yep. You know, like, done with you, done with the VA, you know, and maybe he was just a bad doctor, but that is, I think, what so many of us experience.
Yeah.
Is it's like, here, this will fix it.
And for people out there that are listening too, I had someone else out there, and this is proven clinical research, to where exercise and diet are literally just as effective, if not more, than SSRIs. So if you're being prescribed that stuff, just be aware, start looking into it. And I know Warrior Wad is the specific organization that has this clinical info and stuff out there. But yeah, that's crazy.
No, yeah. Like, if you need it, by all means, like, get it to get through whatever real tough phase that you're going through in your life. I understand that aspect. And I think they have a time and a place, but you should not be on that stuff for the rest of your life. There should not be a reason that you need to be on an SSRI for your entire life.
Did you end up going through like withdrawal symptoms and stuff too?
Yeah, that stuff was rough to go off of. Yeah,
Nope,
like your
I've heard
headaches, like, like nauseousness, all that type of stuff. I had to, like, essentially keep breaking the pills down, and then I would skip like a day and got myself to where I felt normal. I wasn't on that long, you know, only a few months. But yeah, they're not. That stuff, that should tell you right there that it's not good for you.
Yeah.
You know, if you need to be weaned on or off of it, that's a problem too.
That's That's yeah, exactly. American mindset again. You know, take a pill. You know, where is this being pushed from? Not saying it is, but I have heard before someone who had a theory that really, quite honestly, they were like, I wonder if the VA is actually just a pill factory kind of thing with a backdoor deal with a pharmaceutical. You know, but again, that's
Not my circus, not my monkey.
exactly. You know, it could be just the conspiracy theory side of things.
Yeah.
Right? Oh, I think, you know, but at the same time,
I think there's probably great people in the VA that really want to help veterans, and and I think there's also the 5% bad that are out there just doing a job and could care less what you really went through, and don't you're just a block for them to check and another patient. I think that it's 100% accurate, but I think that's where you as the veteran need to understand like where you are in life, and it isn't that bad. It might be bad, but it isn't that bad. And to your point, like, what else are you doing to change things? What are you holding yourself accountable for?
Yeah.
What are you trying to do to get better?
well, and it for my experience personally, and I'm not trying to dog on the VA, and quite honestly, because I've gotten a lot of really good care through the VA, but it almost seems to be the frontline workers, like where the good is coming from. A lot of them are just great people, but then it's when you start getting into the bureaucracy of all of it and the bureaucratic people up there, and then the paperwork end of things, that's when it all just starts falling apart, and you're like, what is happening here? But again, every experience is different, and don't be afraid to push back against the doctor to where you think, hey, maybe I do need a second opinion here.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So, Dale, what are you up to now?
Living life. You know what I mean? I'm a salesman, so I work for a human grade pet food company in the fresh category. I travel a lot for them. I'm a single father. So I spend my time at home, when I'm got my kids doing father things, whether it's working on sports with my kids or working out with them or doing yard chores. So,
well, some of the crazy part about that, though, is that I've seen, or at least I even had an interview with someone else that was it Hire Heroes USA that put you on the path to this particular job, or like in that?
So I've been fortunate enough through, actually, I guess we didn't divulge all the way through. So when I got off of active duty, I went back to life, if you will.
Yeah.
I went to college, and I was on a path to, I was actually going to go on the law enforcement route.
Mm-hmm.
So I have a degree in justice studies. During that time was when the first round of defund the police and everything was kind of going on. And I was getting ready to graduate, and I was like, man, like, do I really want to do this again?
Mm-hmm.
Do I want to do this and maybe get shot while I'm drinking a cup of coffee? Like, at least I kind of knew that I was going into contact when we were over there.
Yeah.
So through all that time, I was kind of like questioning myself. And I was working at a pet store. My ex's family owned a pet store, and I was working there while I was going to college, getting my education. And I was like, I don't know. So I developed a relationship with a distributor rep in the pet food industry at that point in time. So when I graduated, he came in one day and he was like, hey man, I want to talk to you. He's like, I know you just graduated. You think you want to come over here and sell some dog food? And I was like, I don't know about that. Decided to take the job because it was enough money, and rolled into that aspect. But during that time of going to school and everything, I rolled back into the reserves because life wasn't working that well.
Mm-hmm.
My ex wanted to have kids and start a family. I didn't have any access to insurance to make that happen. Wasn't making any really good money. So I leaned back into the military. I also didn't really kind of know what was going to be next. I was like, maybe I need to go back into the military.
Yeah.
Life isn't completely working out the way I think it's going to.
Yeah.
During that time, I met a gentleman named Jonathan Severs, and Severs had just started working at Hire Heroes as well. And he was figuring out how to write resumes and kind of counsel people. So we come to reserves a lot of time, and he would put me through mock interviews, and would ask me probing questions like a boss would interview me and everything like that, and started really kind of redeveloping my personal skills for talking to civilians, if you will. So through that, he has written my resume that got me that first distributor job. when that distributor job fell through, they got bought out. He wrote my resume that landed me with a company called The Honest Kitchen, who I worked for about 10 years. And through that time, he rose in the ranks of the higher heroes. And then I recently, just this, in the last year, decided I wanted to make a career change. I was getting stagnant. Went back to the drawing board with him again, and we went through the same kind of conversations and questions and everything that we had done before. And he, he's been a big beacon in educating, me on the skills that we do have that translates over. Because, being an infantryman, especially, or any of those hard skill MOSs, like a lot of the stuff that you do isn't looked right on terms of, like, you can't put down infantry and expect a civilian person to understand what that means.
Yeah.
But managing people, managing assets,
Yep.
The different type of skills, planning, all that type of stuff.
That we can do.
We could do that type of stuff, right? But a lot of us think that all the sexy stuff that we did is what people care about. It's not. I mean, I went into an interview one time and I was telling this guy stuff that I did, and he just thought I was a killer. Didn't get the job, and that's defeating. That's very, very.
I've been through that myself.
It's very defeating to know that you're a high, intelligent person that's done high value stuff, that has a lot of skill sets, but not know how to put it down on paper to get the right look is very hard.
Yep.
So that organization is an organization that is not out there taking people's money. They truly are writing resumes for service members and spouses.
Yep.
And curtailing it to the job that you want based off of your skill set. So they will write you a resume for literally any job that you want to go after. And will help you interview for it, will help you know how to dress, everything, and get you speaking the lingo, if you will, to go in and ace your interview and pull out your full assets. And that's what he's done for me, and that's company's done for me. So I've been fortunate enough to be involved with them in a roundabout way over the last 10 years, and really have Severs be a professional mentor. We both have similar infantry backgrounds. The trust bond was there. He had a CIB on his chest when I walked in. All right.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I see you got a CIB. So, that trust factor was there with him, but, to anybody is out there that's transitioning or is considering different jobs that has a DD-214 or your spouse, like, reach out to them. They're a good, wholesome organization. They're not taking investors' monies and, lining their pockets with it. They're doing the job.
Yeah, that's, I know I had talked to Severs, and I don't think it was actually through you. I think it was, I saw a post with you with them in it. And I might have asked something about, hey, what do you know about this organization? But there's another one out there, and whether it airs after this one or before, take a look out there for the Higher Heroes USA interview with Jonathan Severs, because hell of a guy, a lot of information. And actually, I the amount of what they're doing now too with like mill spouses as well. A lot of people don't realize how it can be for a mill spouse to find a job.
When you're going to be there for 2 to 3 years.
Yep. And this is the fact too, is that the employers know that around the posts, and a lot of them look down on that, and where they get shoved into these crappy jobs because they're forced to. And it's just like,
yeah. When I was running the pet stores, I mean, that were some of my best employees. Like, I was kind of reverse. I sought after them. I knew that I had a time limit with them.
yeah,
But if you could work with their schedules, a lot of time they were the best employees to have. Like, they were very intelligent women that a lot of times had degrees or were smarter than me. They just were foregoing their life for their husband.
Yep.
And they were raising the family, but they wanted to work. They wanted to get back in some aspect.
Yeah.
They just didn't have the opportunity, or they couldn't really invest in a career because they were going to be moved in 2 to 3 years.
Yeah.
But they have tremendous skill sets. I mean, and they're the reason that a lot of us service members are successful.
I was going to say is families of people, like service members and their families, there is this built-in, like, they are there to serve other people. That's where they're getting a lot of their purpose and stuff. And it's sad to me to see that, but it's also, heartening to know that those people are still out there.
Yeah. So yeah, he's a great person in that organization, is stand up. So highly recommend if you need assistance, go through them.
Nice. Yeah. And I mean, sales, that's something that translates across the board. I mean, really, my thoughts anyway, you're always selling yourself, whether it's one thing or another.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's a phenomenal job.
It's been fun. It's been a different, you know,
Can be.
it's, yeah,
It
it's,
can be sucky too.
it's been an interesting ride. I've got to meet a lot of cool people, experience a lot of cool things, learn a lot about the pet food industry, dogs. You know, I'm a dog guy myself, but just seeing the different avenues and approaches through the pet industry, the different way people run businesses and stuff like that. It is pretty cool. You know, I can't say that I have a bad life. You know, I'm definitely enjoying things right now, and can't be in a better place, I wouldn't say. So if you're feeding your pet and, you know, want a better version, you know, go feed a Pup Above. They're a gently cooked product out there, better version of a farmer's dog, and
Boom.
give them a little plug. And
Put the links in there, tag them in the post.
Yeah.
You're like, hey guys.
try a little bit of their dog food. It's good company, with a farm, you know, with a startup company right now. So
Yeah.
Family owned, and out of Austin, Texas. So
Yeah, but those small ones are what turns into something. You know,
Yeah.
those startups, and especially ones that they have their heart invested. I mean, it doesn't always work out that way, but usually more times than not, you know, if there's good people behind it and they have that drive to push through, that's how that's how they grow. That's how they scale.
yeah. So the last company I was with was literally, I caught them in their break between being a startup and kind of a big corporation. By the time I left, they were valued at over 500 million, and we were in every avenue that you could be in pet food. And it's nothing against the company. It just my job was kind of done there, if you will.
Yeah. No. I completely understand. If you're
Yeah.
not fitting anymore,
Yeah.
you know, it's time to go.
Yeah.
You know, because you get, you know, the stagnation, you know, and that's not good for anybody.
No,
It
it
really
wasn't.
isn't.
Yeah, I wasn't any good. I wasn't doing them any favors. They weren't doing me any favors by the end, and it was time to put my skill set somewhere else.
Yeah. All right. So if there's someone out there, and I know you kind of already answered this one, but to reconnect and everything, what would be the best way? Someone calls, or you're thinking about somebody and stuff.
I think it really is just, if you're thinking about someone, if it's this day and age, text them. You know, if you're thinking about them, text them. Ideally, if you can take it a step further and call them. But I think it's, you know, really don't have an agenda, and just really try to figure out where people are in life and
Yeah.
what they've been up to, and to be proud of your brothers and your sisters, and, you know, just be thankful for them that they're here, and you know, understand that life is so many different avenues, and just because you're high right now, you know, you're high as high as, and you're ain't as high as you think you are, and you ain't as low as you think you are, you know, that whole saying.
Yeah.
And just kind of meet people where they're at in their life, and be happy for them. Don't be, you know, if you were the team leader and now your Joe's more successful than you, be happy for them, you know, and that doesn't mean that they're still not going through something. It doesn't mean you still can't be their leader, but they're just more professionally successful than you at that time.
I was going to say is I heard it from someone else, and I don't know if it was direct but they said something along the lines of, I have not met a successful person out there that hasn't been through the fire on the
Yeah.
way up.
Yeah.
You know, so I mean, you might look at that person and be like, man, look at them, and they're so successful. It's like, yeah, but you know what they've been through to get them there.
Yeah. And also, you know, if you were their leader at some point in time, you helped get them there.
Yep.
You know, if one way or another, you kind of help get them there.
Yeah.
So I think that's it. And then, you know, the whole saying, if it's not me, then who type of thing, you know, then who? Be that person, you know, be that guy that creates the Zoom link. Be that guy that texts everybody and says, hey, we got a call on this date. And maybe you have 5 guys show up, and that 5 guys shows a 7, and 7 times 12.
Yep.
Do it. Just do it. I don't know what else to say, you know. And if you're those guys sitting out there, click on that link and be on that call. You know, say you got to sit there every time, or you got to listen to everything, but be on that call for 30 minutes and talk back and open up. I think a lot of times just opening up, if you can be vulnerable and let people understand that, like, you're going through it, they're probably going to let a little bit of what's going on in their life out too.
Yeah.
And it takes you stepping aside from your ego and putting your shit out there and saying, you know what, I've been divorced, I've had addiction issues, I've been an alcoholic, I've slept with as many people as I could do, whatever the case is, pleasure, buried my pain with pleasure. I've done all that. I've put the gun to my head. So I'm here to tell you that,
Yes.
If I've been through it and I know that I'm still living and I'm still fighting and trying, then what's stopping you? But if you don't know that, maybe because you see me successful.
Yeah. Well, look at him. Like, man, like I can't be there.
Yeah, because
I don't see that end.
Because I've dealt with this. Well, guess what? I've had all the same problems.
Yeah.
And I've heard that from some people before, and and it's true. It's true. If you're willing to put yourself out there and to let people know that you're hurting, they're going to probably do the same.
Yeah.
And so, I mean,
no, it resonates. And there's a ripple effect. Like once you raise that hand, or once you take that step to do that, it's surprising to see the people that come out of the woodwork to talk about it, or thank you for that end. Like, dude, thanks for opening up about that. You have no idea what I was going through at the time.
So I think, to your things, put the ego aside. You're not a badass anymore. You're not Superman anymore. We're all vulnerable. We're all humans. If it hurts, things hurt, different things hurt.
Yeah.
And, just be willing to talk about, your shit, and it's okay. Like, no, I don't think
we're just people, man.
We're just people, right?
Everybody's got their struggle. We're just people, and we can learn more from each other than it is apart.
Yeah. And I think, no one judges everything. We judge like he's had issues at some one time. Who cares?
Yeah.
Who cares sometimes what other people think about you?
Yeah.
What does it matter?
Yep.
You got to put your shoes on, you got to put your pants on, and you got to be the one to step up. So if you're willing to lay it all out there,
yeah,
who cares if you're saving other people and there's no agenda?
Dale, I can't even think of another way to end this. That was like perfect, man. So,
hey, brother,
dude, thanks for coming on. And no, anytime. I'm sure there's going to be something in the future anyway where you'll pop up here and there. So, but no, thanks, man. Appreciate it.
I hope you've enjoyed this episode of Veteran Success Story. If you want to know more about Dale's story and unpackage some of the trials he's been through and what the guys he served with went through within the Arghandab River Valley, pick up a copy of The Devil's Playground by Andrew Bragg. Additionally, you can pick up Damn the Valley by myself, William Yeske, and there's a new book coming from the guys that took over that area of responsibility from To Charlie, called The Sons of the Argandab by Joseph Wardnop. These can be found, Casemate, they're all Casemate books. You can also find them on Amazon. But go check out The Devil's Playground. Phenomenal book. It gives you a little bit more of a backstory on what Dale's talking about in these interviews, like some of the things that he's been through, the struggles that he's faced. And, it'll make you kind of shake your head and go, wow, this guy's been through so much, but he has such a passion for taking care of the other guys that he was with. And that's really due to a lot of everything that was pushed down from battalion, from us. We had a great leadership team in both Sergeant Major Puckett and Lieutenant Colonel Frank Genio. And they really pushed these guys in taking care of the men, and the men that really took that to heart. We haven't stopped. We haven't stopped pushing. We haven't stopped caring for those around us. So Dale is a guy with a big heart, and you can follow him. I'm going to tag him and everything, but look in the description as well. I'm going to have these books up within there. And pending his permission, I'll also have his LinkedIn profile if anyone's out there wanting to hear him speak or have him come and speak to their leadership team or as a leadership example, I would highly recommend it. He's a very well-spoken guy. And quite honestly, this whole episode was just off the cuff for him. He's never done anything like this before. And again, it's that vulnerability and that leadership quality that was instilled from the very start from the guys at Two Fury. So thank you to them as well, because that gave me some of my base too. But thank you for joining us on this other episode. And again, The Devil's Playground, go check it out. Dale Knollinger, heck of a guy. Thank you again. And the Morrison House, I appreciate us being able to use your facility, you know, that room, that back room. Thank you for setting that stuff apart for us. I really appreciate it. So join us next week. We got a heck of a guest coming on. Follow and subscribe for more, either whatever social platform that you prefer or the podcast. Do me a favor too. If you found the episode useful, give it a rating. You know, whatever platform that you're listening on, follow, subscribe, whatever it is. This is the free one to do. It's fine. It's across YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. But give it a rating. You know, tell someone else about it. These are little things that take nothing, and it helps me keep the show free for you guys, but it also helps out up the ante, because the more people that are listening, the more possibilities and where I can bring this thing. So thanks again for listening, and this has been yet another great veteran success story.